G'day, folks. We are here, Faction Focus. My name's the Coach, if you don't know who I am, and we are having Faction Focus Flesh Eater Courts, a video that you guys, by popular demand, have been harassing me and asking, where is this video? Where is this video? Where is this video? It is here. Hallelujah. And I'm here with potentially the best flesh-eating corpse, ghoul, people, corrupted, death souls that we have available. The first one we have is captain of the ETC in America. He is a well-known Flesh Eater Courts player and absolutely honored to have him on the stream. Bill Souza, how are you, good sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Took us a minute, but we finally did it.
We got there. And is there anything that you'd want to add to your introduction? I'm sure I butchered it.
No, completely fine. Competitive player in the U.S., and I think you put there at Team America AOS for Facebook and Twitter if anybody wants to see what's going on. Don't post on there much, but when I do, it's usually something funny anyway.
You've been a long-time player as well, and I'm sure we'll talk a bit about it, but you were playing before Grizzle Gore was a thing, so really looking forward to hearing your insights. And then on the bandwagon from someone who jumped from Daughters of Cain over to Flesh Eater Courts, but is doing very, very well and very, very talented competitive player as well. We have Jesse Perkins from Australia. G'day, Jesse.
How are you going? Way to make me sound like the filthiest player going around, Magro. I really appreciate that.
I mean, to be fair, we've got Liam on this channel, so people know that he is the benchmark of cheese.
We've got a filth player at our club as well, so he knows who he is. He's probably worse than Liam.
But you've been on the competitive scene for a while now, so and you know, in all the jokes aside, you've done very, very, very well with Flesh Eater Courts, and not always this traditional busted version of it. So,
I've never played busted versions. I've played the Feast Day, which I've argued is the best all the way along, but yeah, never gone for the Trip Dragons or anything like that. So yeah, and I liked them before they were filth. I started collecting before they were filth, so I'm holding you to that, Matt Tyrrell.
He's already called you a filth chaser, but
yeah, that's right.
The Flesh Eater Courts are an army that's been around since almost the dawn of time in Age of Sigmar. It's done really, really well. It got a new battle tome about 6 to 12 months ago, depending on when you watch this video. And it definitely went from an okay generic army to something that's been super strong. So I think today I really want to unpack not just the Grizzle Girl build, which is one that's been heavily kind of promoted as like the list, but we can talk a bit more about the other different ways to build Flesh Eater Courts around the style. And much like all of the faction focuses that we do, it is definitely towards a more of a competitive build. So if you really enjoy your Flesh Eater Courts and you want to build an army of 1,000 ghouls, I am not somebody to tell you otherwise. Do what you want to do. But if you want to go really well at a tournament, or maybe go out and buy some models and build the best list that you possibly can, these two gentlemen are going to take us through what's the considerations that you want to make. And I think the good news is, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, there is no one golden list. Like, there's no Petrifix elite to this army. It's very much some different components, but not just one
agree.
build.
A lot of it too is really you're going to look at the mission packet and what the local meta is. And I mean, that build's going to change drastically depending on what that is. So yeah, there is no Petrifix kind of magic bullet, as you mentioned.
Amazing. So I might, just high level, Jesse, talk to me. Who are the Flesh Eater Courts? I know you're a big narrative gamer. I know you're very much around the lore. What do we know about this particular army?
I think the best way to to give an overview on this army is they're delusioned. Delusioned is the easiest way to basically explain the Flesh Eater Courts. They're filthy, like abhorrent creatures that think that they're noblemen. There's no other way to put it. In the book, there's a certain paragraph that explains it perfectly, the way that they see things. And I think it's only maybe like 3-4 sentences, but it's told as the point of view of the noblemen standing on a hill with these feral creatures running towards them. And they come down on their griffins and their horses and their noblemen. And then by the end of the paragraph, it says, that they're actually the Flesh Eater Courts, but in their head, that's how they imagine it, and that is the antithesis of Flesh Eater Courts. Basically, that's exactly what they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some people have made parallels to the old Bretonia, the Knights of the Realm, and the very courts and kings and queens, and the what you see on the table, these absolute monstrosities of ghouls, are not the way they see themselves, and and definitely they've been banished as well from Nagash. So if you wonder why this army doesn't kind of work well with Nagash, it's actually in the story that they got banished, and Nagash wants nothing to do with them. They're like the red-headed stepchild. Go away. No Christmas presents for you.
And they actually don't have a soul, just like redheads.
Bill, anything you'd want to add to that?
I think half the
Like
may have just left. No, he hit the nail on the head. They're just absolutely mad, and can't let go of what they may have been in the past, and they're delusional. I think they're still knights and noblemen.
Which I've built a Flesh Eater Courts army, and that's given me such an amazing conversion opportunity to make my own, knights. So very, very, very cool army. Lots of great ways to do it. I think it's super good, and the beautiful thing is their start collecting box is probably one of the most versatile and best value boxes out there. So if you want to start collecting, if you want to build Flesh Eater Courts, that box is gold.
3 of them, that's like what, 450 Australian. That's probably the best value for money next to maybe Beast Claw Raiders that we've got. Those big nasties at a high points value. If you're getting into the scene, it's definitely one of the best ones. Them and Beast Claws, best value for money. Great army, not intense rules for you to learn. 100%. They're definitely the lowest barrier to entry army in terms of price and playability in Australia with our inflated Games Workshop prices that we have to deal with. But yeah, definitely couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I actually come back from Blood and Glory 2 years ago with 4 start collecting boxes. It had literally everything I needed. Yeah. I wanted to build a Royal Menagerie, so I'd got my 4 Terror Geist or my 3 Terror Geist and a Zombie Dragon, leader. I had my battle line sorted. I had my elite unit sorted. Basically, it was it at the time. So
and it's not even solo build, right? Like you buy 3 of those and you can build almost anything in the book. Like
you've got your battle line already for a 2,000 point army out of 4 of those boxes.
Mm-hmm.
So Bill, what attracted you to Flesh Eater Courts? Like, why did you start this particular army, and so long ago as well, knowing that the very strong builds of today weren't around when you started?
Yeah, I mean, most of it was even before I really got heavy into the competitive scene, it was just the aesthetic of them. I love the models. When I was playing fantasy, I actually had a fully converted undead army that they were all ghouls, even like my grave guard were, ghouls in armor and stuff. So really, it was the aesthetic. The barrier to entry was a little bit different back in the fantasy days, but either way, I love the models. And when AOS actually got some points, it gave me a chance to do some rebasing and get them back on the table.
And Jesse, yourself, what got you from Daughters of Cain over to FEC?
So CanCon 2019, basically they had just released the Abhorrence little rule with the D3 wounds, D3 extra attacks, sorry. And in my head I go, oh, this would be awesome on a unit of 40 ghouls. Like, little did I know how terrible it is to roll that many dice. But I was just looked at that and I've gone, this is really, really cool. And this is before we knew about the dragons and the, Grizzle Gore and all that kind of stuff. But I was like, all right, I think I'm gonna go down this path. And I think there might even be a Twitter question I put up, asking which way I should go, because I was thinking it. And like Bill said, I really, really like the aesthetic of them. I think they're awesome. They're just disgusting. It's easy to paint as well, which is always a really good thing, especially if you're starting out into AOS. Easy to paint is definitely just lowers that barrier to entry again. But then, once they started, showing their colors and you could see how good they were, that was just an added bonus for me. But I'd already committed. I'd painted 40 ghouls by the time the book came out. And once you paint 40 of anything, you're pretty much committed to an army.
Yeah, you will make that work.
100%.
I remember picking up the Battle Tome. At the time, I can't remember who else. I remember talking to my good friend Deke, and we were like, I'm finished with my free people for a while. Blood and Glory was my last tournament. I wanted to run those guys. And I'm like, what am I going to run next? Is it FEC or is it? I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was Ironjaws. Maybe it was somebody else. And I remember reading the stories in the battle tome of Flesh-Eater Courts, and I'm like, this is amazing. This whole delusion and the way that they perceive themselves versus what they do on the table was really interesting to me. And I got some pretty cool conversion opportunities, and mine are very knightly. And hell, I've got ghouls with like musicians and banners, and trying to bring that old world knightly aesthetic to the ghouls. So you're right, value for money story. It's versatile. Great reasons to play with Feck. So Bill, I'm going to ask you now, what's the strengths of the army? So we know that they're, I wouldn't say cheap, but they're very, very easy to get into, and your box sets are great value for money. And we've got the flexibility and versatility. What are the other strengths that you build upon when you build a list or you get into this army?
Yeah, so again, usually what I do is that when I start with the list, I'm going to first look at the packet, and really that's where a big strength of the army is you can build it to do so many different things. I mean, you can build a really hyper-aggressive army. You can build something that summons and brings guys back on the table heavily, and you can just refocus the army to pivot to whatever your meta and packet is going to be. And it's with a small model selection. So again, you're if you choose a completely different build that acts a completely different way, you're not having to invest hundreds of dollars in that. It's still the same models. You're just putting them in a different type of list. So really just that versatility of being able to be fast and aggressive or very defensive, or even play it as a horde army. I mean, you can do almost anything with the book.
Yeah, you can be elite, and we'll talk about building lists around this. You could flood the board with ghouls. You could build up these super elite troops where they're big monsters, or the flayers, or the horrors. That's really cool. Jesse, what are some of the other strengths that you see that the army has?
For me, I think Bill pretty much nailed it. They can play in maybe not every single phase. Like, they obviously don't have a very great shooting. People rate the flayers for shooting. I really don't. But they do have a counter for nearly everything. You can play them, most scenarios, you've got a way to challenge that scenario. When I build armies, I tend to start with the battalions and then go from there. Try and find something that I think is going to work, and then build to that. Then you've got to play, and then you adjust going from there. But they are they have an answer to nearly everything in the game. Just depends whether or not you can counteract your opponent, I suppose. But yeah, horde army, elite army, low model count, high model count. They pretty much can play every type of game.
Yeah, which I think is the obviously a strength, but also the weakness. Some people are like, just what's the list for Feck? It's like, well, you could build around this ghoul patrol and have all the ghouls. I could build a list around summoning. I could build a list that has, guys coming from the sides of the boards. I could build one that's very healing orientated. So there's a lot of versatility, and that's probably why this book has survived 6 months, 12 months since the original book come out. Like, it's been doing really well. It's not like a flash in the pan like some other armies. This has done well for a while, and that versatility has been key.
And despite what people thought when it first came out, it hasn't stayed at that broken level that everyone thought it was going to be. People figured out how to counter Grizzlegore. They FAQ'd it as well, which also made a massive difference to it. And I've been beaten plenty of times. Like, I'd get beaten by the mayor constantly. Matt Tyrrell beats me all the time, and it's probably because he knows my army inside out. But you can lose with them. They're not that overpowered army, and I think that gives them survivability too, because it doesn't mean that they're going to get deleted out of the game.
Yeah, it's definitely one that your opponent's unlikely going to have a bad time. So that's
Maybe.
Awesome. Well, I mean, like, you can build around that, but for some people who are like, I want to have a good game, it's a friendly game, this is good. This is an army for you.
I think you only make the same mistake against Flesh-Eater Courts once. So you either don't play far enough back, or you play too offensively, and it doesn't work out well for you. But yeah, you're right. Your opponent might have a bad time the first time around, but the second game is always better.
That's why they're a lot more tolerable too, especially at tournaments. It's just people know how to play against them now. So
that's right.
The first couple months, people were just getting used to how to counter them and everything. And just like any other new book, right? It's the end of the world, and then people figure out how to play against it, and you're losing games.
So we talked about some of the strengths, and probably on the other side of the pendulum is one of the weaknesses. So we know that they're not a shooting army, so you're not going to have a catapult. You're not going to have any long-range threats. I think the longest range is, 9 or 10 from, like, breath attacks or streaming attacks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in my eyes, I think the biggest weakness, aside from the shooting, is just it's an army that has a few key models or units. So if you play against an opponent that's either just very familiar with it or just has especially shooting type armies, and they can really take out those key elements like a Terrorgeist or a big flare unit, it can put you on the back foot real quick. And you do have some summoning that can try to trick things up a little bit, but really that's the crux of the army, is it does rely on a couple key units and very expensive ones.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. It's those linchpins. It's a very linchpin army. There's been games where I've lost, a dragon, and then almost the game is over just from that, because the ghouls are great, but they are expensive for what they are too. So when you have a dragon die, the linchpins just absolutely fall apart. You get rid of one of the characters that bring models back in the ghouls, or in terms of the horrors or the flayers, your Vargulf or your courtiers, and that just kind of really hurts you as well, because we actually, struggle. We're not like, it's not death. You don't get to bring back D3, D6 each turn. You kill those. Exactly. You kill those key characters, and the whole game starts to change. I mean, I've lost an abhorrent before I've even got to use him, and that's 200 points worth of summoning. And if he dies turn one before you get to do anything with him, that's a huge impact on the whole game. So the characters are very important, and they're also kind of squishy. Like, we don't have a 3-up zombie dragon. Ours is a 4-up. Yeah. And a 4-up with the ethereal amulet, that's still a 4-up. You put 28 wounds into it, it's still going to die.
Yeah, and especially that aberrant in particular. I mean, that if you lose him, that's not only a loss in summon points, but you also lose a lot of your output just because it's at D3 attacks.
Absolutely,
that's massive on any unit. So now that they're not as cheap as they used to be, and you typically only put one in a unit, if you lose them, it's output, it's board control. I mean, it's a huge hit.
I'd say the other weakness is they're not the strongest magic army, so you probably don't see a lot of high casting wizards, not a lot of double casting wizards. It's not one that's going to throw a whole bunch of endless spells on the board. So if you're looking for that wizard type army, obviously it does have some magic, but it's not a lot of magic. And against a Zencha, Hello Heart, something that has magic potential, you're not going to stand up against them.
Coming from playing Daughters of Cain to this has got a lot of magic, but you're coming from Gloomspike Gits, and that's a lot of magic. So that's... yeah, you're right, they don't, but I played against Joe Pagano at CanCon, and he had his guys at +3 to cast. So, they can be competitive. And what does Nagash get? He gets +4, I think, to his casting.
Plus a bagillion. But he has 8 casts, I think. I think that's the thing, right? You can get some pluses, but you don't get a lot of casts in Feck. And if you're building towards that, you're probably trading off some really good attack potential in Feck in order for magic.
Yeah, and your point with the endless spells couldn't be more accurate. I've tried to build lists to include a lot of endless spells, and you just run out of points very quickly. The dragons,
you run out of cast too. Your spells are so key.
That's true. And every single spell you put on your models are basically you want to cast them. Even their generic spells are really good. That makes it hard to cast endless spells. So
yeah, and I'm not saying that they're bad casters, but if you're looking for magical supremacy on the board, this is not the list for you. Same as shooting. If you want to shoot your army off your opponent off the board, Feck's not really the build for you.
Yeah, definitely. Or survive shooting.
Yeah. I mean, like, you can get up there and shoot them, but you're not going to shoot them off the board like an OBR catapult.
No, and that's always been my problem with flayers, I suppose, is they're not a shooting army, and people do quote that flayers are good for that, but they've just been lackluster every time I've used them. So yeah, it's definitely a big downfall.
I mean, I don't rely on that shooting. I mean, that's bonus damage if nothing else. Yeah. Most of the time, I'm not even doing it because I'm afraid if it does hit hard, I'm pulling myself out of charges. So
yeah, that's the other part of it, isn't it? Yeah, you almost want to shoot the thing you don't want to charge. So
right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we know some of the strengths, we know some of the weaknesses. I think for me now, if I'm going to build Flesh Eater Courts as opposed to Grand Alliance Death, I want to know what I get for my bang for buck. So here's some of the Allegiance stuff. You know, Bill, what do I get by going Flesh Eater Courts as opposed to like Grand Alliance Death? Like, do I get any cool stuff from my Allegiance?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, really the big thing is, of course, you're depending on what Grand Court you go in, but really it's that bottom left corner there, that command ability, Feeding Frenzy. I mean, that is literally is doubling the output of many of your units because you're attacking twice here. So, you know, outside of the Grand Courts, which obviously have their own, or even lack of a Grand Court, the delusions are huge. But that Feeding Frenzy is really what gives your army output.
Jesse, anything else you'd want to add to that?
I mean, you can't go past an extra 6-up save, can you? That it's very much come from the Death Allegiance, but 40 ghouls with an extra 6-up makes a big difference. And some of those clutch 6s I've rolled with the dragons and left him with 1 wound, they always help as well. So, but the double pile in, that's you take the army for that double pile in, without a doubt.
Yeah, so what Jesse's talking about is the Deathless Courtier. So basically, if you're wholly within 12 inches of a Flesh Eater Courts hero, you get an additional 6+ save for wounds and mortal wounds. And then Bill was talking about the command ability, which allows you to essentially, so you can use the command ability for friendly Flesh Eater Courts that are fought in combat. Basically, you can pile in and attack for a second time. So that's quite generous. The third and final piece, I guess, actually there's 2 other pieces I'd call out. One is the Court of Delusion. So that allows you to take a sub-allegiance. So you take Flesh Eater Courts, and then you can customize and tailor that a little bit more with the Morgant, the Blister Skin, the Hallow Morn, and the Grizzle Gore. So you can then kind of tailor that list even more around a particular style, and that gives you some command traits and some artifacts and some cool stuff, much like some of the other sub-allegiances that you may know, from temples or skyports and all that kind of stuff, cities. You've got your delusions as well, so that allows you. Jesse, do you want to take us through a little bit what the delusions are all about?
Yeah, right. So instead of choosing Blisterkin or Grizzle Gore, you can go for a build outside of that, which allows you to pick one of these 6 delusions and your own artifacts instead of getting a Grand Court specific like command ability and artifact. So do you want me to quickly run through them? Coach?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, why not?
So you've got Crusading Army, which is add 1 to run and charge rolls for friendly Flesh Eater Courts units. The Royal Hunt, so re-roll hit rolls of 1 and wound rolls of 1 for attacks made by friendly Flesh Eater Courts units that target a monster. The Feast Day, which, as far as I'm concerned, this is the only one that's actually worth taking. Once per turn, you can use the Feeding Frenzy, which is the double pile-in command ability, for free, without using a command point, basically. So that is probably the only one I would take, but Bill might be able to argue otherwise. You've got a Matter of Honor, reroll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made by Flesh Eater Courts units that target a hero. If the target is a general, you can reroll wound rolls of 1 as well. The Grand Tournament, you can reroll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made by friendly Flesh Eater Courts heroes other than your general. And Defenders of the Realm, so reroll save rolls of 1 for Flesh Eater Courts units that have at least half their models wholly within their own territory. So 5 of them are basically rerolls, and some of them are very specific rerolls. And then you've got the Feast Day, which I've basically highlighted and scratched a big thing around in my book because it's the only one worth taking out of them. The Grand Courts are great, but that Feast Day, if you're in combat all 5 turns, it's basically 10 free command points. So you can't go past that as far as I'm concerned. It's actually been the only one I've played pretty much because I haven't thought the other ones are worth going for. And being a competitive player, I like to just, flog a dead horse and play the same list or the same roughly the same build until I get good and learn all of its weaknesses. So, but I have played against every single other build because Flesh Eater Courts always plays Flesh Eater Courts for some reason.
Yeah, I completely agree on the feast day. I mean, you're essentially generating 2 command points a turn as long as you're in combat, and especially if you have a build that's running more than one offensive unit. So if you're not just using, one unit to push combat, you're going to run out of command points real quick, even if you buy the extra and have a battalion. So yeah, that feast day, if you're not running a Grand Court, the feast day is the go-to.
So the Grand Court. Sorry, Anthony, you go.
No, please.
The Grand Courts are really good, and they're, like I said, they're the only other ones you would go for outside of, the feast day, as far as I'm concerned, because, reroll 1s to hit and wound and save. We've got command abilities to do that now, and you can they've got a wider reach than these very specific, times that you would use it. So, yeah, feast day every day.
Yeah, and again, I'm going to say this over and over probably through this, but really, you got to understand your packet and you have to understand the meta, because, I was running Feast Day majority of the time when the book first came out, but, as the meta has shifted and as packets have shifted here in the U.S. anyway, I've kind of gone more to blister skin. But yeah, it really depends on what your meta is, because again, each of the Grand Courts and even this generic Grand Illusion Feast Day, it's going to operate your whole army completely differently.
Yes.
So you really got to look at the packet, and you really have to look at what's happening in your meta. But if you don't know what that is, then you can't go wrong with Feast Day. It's good.
Yeah, it's a pretty safe bet.
Yeah. I was just going to say, again, if you're coming from a different army into this is an optional thing. So unlike, let's say, Cities of Sigmar, where you must choose a city, there's no option. You have the option here of either going one of those 4 Grand Courts, or you can kind of make your own, which is what we're talking about here. So there's lots of flexibility. And if you don't know the meta, 1, I do a video every month around the meta, but 2, just look at the different armies that are in your local games community, whether it's your local games club or your store or people are playing. And, to what Bill said, if people are playing a lot of Petrifix Elite Ossiarch Bone Reapers, or they're playing Slanesh, and you want to know how to respond to them as best as possible, that's when you might look at changing your list accordingly. And that's what competitive players do ultimately. They don't always stick to one list. But in your scene, you may have a lot of shooting or a lot of magic. So just think about that as you're building your army. We'll talk more generically, but that's what we're referring to if you're not familiar with meta.
And there are different builds or different solutions to each of those. So, if you have a heavy shooting, there is a list for that. If you have a heavy Slanesh meta, there are lists for that. So, just keep that in mind. That's all.
Yeah, that's a really good call out. The last call out I'd make as well is you get a terrain piece. So not every army gets a free terrain piece. You are one of those, and you get what is it? The chalice? No, the coven. The little
the charnel throne.
The charnel throne. That's wrong.
Yeah.
that thing. What?
You
Jesse,
get there eventually.
And I just throw generic fantasy things. Eventually, like garden, flowers. What does it do? What do I get for it?
So the Charnel Throne allows you to basically get a free summon from your heroes, providing they're within range of it. So I think the range is 1 inch, so it's not a huge range, but it's like Bill stated earlier. It's that command point. Managing your command points. So every time you don't need to do that, that's a second pile in using, your feeding frenzy. Like every time you don't spend one, that's an extra one later on. So, if you run your heroes near the throne, turn 1, turn 2, and then summon through the throne, it's saving command points. There's some other benefits like, an extra point of bravery. It also makes your opponents scared, gives them basically sinister. So it helps, but that doesn't, it's never really come into play for me. But yeah, that free, it's just command point management, basically. It's an extra thing to help you out.
And it doesn't cost you anything, so you get this for free in your army. So make sure to go grab one and make sure to bring it with you when you play.
And it's a great place to hide your Archregent.
That's exactly right.
So when we start to build our list, and that's probably the next part that I want to go to. So I'm going to start building my Flesh Eater Courts list. And I guess I've got 2 questions, or almost 2 ways we can do this. for some people, they like to build based on their sub allegiance. They're like, I want to build a Hello Morn list, and I'm gonna, start at Hello Morn or Hagnar or whatever army we're playing. Some people are like, well, I want to start picking my units, and then based on the unit selection, I'm going to pick a sub allegiance that works for me. What's a good way for Flesh Eater Courts players to start building? Is it around the unit selection, or is it more at the rule selection?
I mean, for me, this is a real easy one to answer. It almost goes back to that first segment. Is again, if you're buying those start collecting boxes, you're buying every build.
Exactly what I was going to say.
That makes it really, really simple. But really, starting somewhere would just be whatever rules you think are the coolest, in my eyes.
Yeah.
Or again, if you know what your meta is, or you know what build is going to work best against them, then you can start there.
I mean, if you're starting out in AOS in general, the 4 starter box setup and then running Blisterkin, you're guaranteed to at least be able to play in all phases of the game. It will give you that opportunity because you get to go first. So even if you're terrible, it's a really good army to learn with, because you're on that Blisterkin with your 3 or 4 dragons, and you're guaranteed to at least get to fight. Even if you are, your movement's not great and your piling in isn't great, it's a really good army to start with. You can be competitive out of the box pretty much. You're not going to lose all your games, and you're not going to hate it. And it's, the boxes, I reckon, is definitely the best place to start. That's not how I build,
I think the Gristle Gore is great to start with as well, just because.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, it gives you a little bit of a buffer to. I made a mistake here, but I can attack first, so that's
Sorry, I did mean Gristle Gore, not Blisterkin.
That's all right. Yeah. So let's maybe imagine that I have bought a start collecting box, or maybe I bought 2, or maybe I bought 3 to start with. I'm fully committed. So we've got all these profiles here, both available to us and it's basically the start collecting box, as well as we've recently had the special character being released. Now you can pick that up independently. We also have an Underworld warband we can bring into our army. So let's maybe start with some of our leader choices. So we have a bunch of leader choices available to us. We have the Archregent, we have the Ghoul King, so the abhorrent Archregent and the Ghoul King. We have a Crypt Courtier, the Crypt Haunter Courtier. We have the Vargulf. We have the Infernal Courtier as well. And then we have 2 other big monster leaders. One would be the Ghoul King on a Royal Terrorgeist and a Ghoul King on a Royal Zombie Dragon. So maybe throw Bill your first one. If you're going to pick build a list, what would be a good choice, and why would you take it? Give me a bit of source here.
Yeah, the leaders are really where you start with. Almost no matter what build you're going to do, you're always going to start with an Archregent, and in my opinion, a Ghoul King on Terrorgeist. So reasons for each. The Archregent, again, you got your D3 attacks spell, and he basically pays for himself with what he summons. But the D3 attacks on any unit in your army is really huge. And then the Terrorgeist is just one of your main pushes for damage in the army. Very, very reliable damage, especially if you're re-rolling hits with your mount attacks. So for me, that's every list, no matter what the build, I'm typically starting with 1 Archregent and 1 Ghoul King on Terrorgeist.
And the Archregent, is that one that was in the special box? Is that correct?
Yes. Now it's sold individually. Fine.
Now it's sold individually. So go and buy it while it's around.
Definitely. Don't get ripped off on eBay like I did.
Look, people were buying that model for crazy money on eBay for a reason. Potentially they'll buy more than one. So 100% the abhorrent Archregent, get one of those into your list. And I think you guys had said you get a free summon from it.
Yeah, it basically turns him into a 40-point model if you want those ghouls. So, big difference. He can summon a unit of horrors, a unit of flayers, a Vargulf, or 20 ghouls. And 20 ghouls are the best value for money. It's 200 points worth of models. So, a 240-point model, bring on 200 points is pretty good value, especially with those extra attacks that he can hand out to people. So.
Yeah, great. Look, I'd agree with that. And Bill, just before I ask Jesse what his picks are, I want to know why would you put a Ghoul King on a Terrorgeist over a Zombie Dragon? Like, what's some of the key differences, or what makes it more appealing for the Terrorgeist?
Yeah, so there's a few different key differences. One would be the signature spell. So, what that does, and I believe the name of it is Unholy Vitality. That lets you
Correct.
pick a Flesh Eater Quartz unit and give it basically an extra 5-up death save. So if you really need to, if you're getting lined up and you may get a double turn, just putting durability on either a big screen or even him himself, if you're sending him in as a missile, that's big. And then the other key difference is just his mount attack. So on 6s to hit, those mounts deal 6 mortal wounds, and they do have a mount trait that lets them reroll those hits. So again, it's a big damage push, and it has a really strong signature spell. And then to another certain extent, I mean, you can argue about whether the zombie dragon summoning a Courtier or him summoning the 3 flares or horrors are better. But I mean, the two big things for me is the spell and the mount attacks.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, you probably could argue, and if you took a Ghoul King on a Zombie Dragon, you haven't made a bad selection. I think there are some benefits on either side, but the Terrorgeist, especially with the Terrorgeist monster and the damage it can do, certainly is probably more appealing than the Zombie Dragon, which is a bit more utility. It's got a stronger breath attack, and it has some additional benefits from the abilities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jesse, give me a hero choice that you would pick. So we talked about the Ghoul King on Terrorgeist. We've obviously talked about the Archregent.
Yeah. So I agree with Bill. They are my 2 picks as well. But for sake of teaching some people, I think the Zombie Dragon does have a lot to be said for it as well. That Zombie Dragon allowing you to, I think it's reroll wounds. And it's a bubble as well, so that does give you a lot, especially if you're running 2 dragons. If you've got 2 dragons and they're both re-rolling their wound rolls, that basically makes all of their attacks really, really dangerous. So if you've got a Terrorgeist and a Zombie Dragon, and you run both of them, and you run them up in a group together, the Zombie Dragon is really, really good. I don't think there's any bad choice between the Terrorgeist and the Zombie Dragon. The Zombie Dragon can also come down from the skies, and you can basically just snipe characters from the other end of the board. You don't have to worry about a movement phase. It's one of the abilities for the Zombie Dragon that you've got. Let me just find it here. Death from the skies. So instead of setting the model up on the battlefield, you can place it to one side and say that it's soaring in the skies in reserve. If you do so, at the end of your first movement phase, you must set this unit up on the battlefield more than 9 from any enemy units. I mean, that potential threat, you give away turn 1 or your opponent takes turn 1 and they got a Zombie Dragon to worry about, I think that's a really big shout. But yeah, that's my, just for a different view on it. But Terrorgeist and Archregent, definitely every time for me as well. They're definitely far superior, but for argument's sake, the Zombie Dragon is also very, very good.
What I love about both of them as well is the Royal Blood ability, where in the hero phase it can heal up to D3 wounds every hero or every hero phase of yours. So
huge.
which is huge. So not only is it a huge damage dealer, not only can they both summon something, they also get to heal as well. So they can be very, very tanky.
Definitely.
Yeah, when you get that Royal Blood and you combine, some of the big durability builds, especially, and you're combining that with like the Chalice. I mean, that provides a situation where your opponent has to kill that model in one turn. Otherwise they're going to go right back up to full health. So definitely.
Yeah, and that Chalice is amazing. So for those that don't know what the Chalice is, it's a endless spell, Flesh Eater Quartz only endless spell. I think Nagash can use it, but I don't think I've ever heard of anyone ever doing that. And so what you do is you cast it on a value of 6, set it up within 24 of the caster, and then you basically keep track of every model that dies within 12 inches of the Chalice. And then at the end of the turn, you roll the dice for each model that died, and on a 4-up, you either heal a wound or you bring back basically a ghoul. And then something that I'm not sure whether everyone knows, but in your turn, you roll the dice, and in your opponent's turn, they control the endless spell. Therefore, they roll the dice, and they get to choose where the wounds go. So if you're playing against Flesh Eater Quartz as well, you may decide that, hey, I don't want your dragon to heal the wounds. I'm going to actually give them back to the ghouls, or vice versa. So your opponent actually gets to allocate. It's never not worked out well for me when my opponent's allocated, because usually there's more dead stuff and too many wounds to go around. But it is something to keep in mind if you are want to, when you're playing against Flesh Eater Courts, even it's something to keep in mind. In your turn, you get to choose where the wounds go, but good luck not having a lot of wounds to give back to the dragon. It's definitely going to happen.
And we will talk more about endless spells later, but that was a really good call out at a right time, because not only can the Royal Blood, Zombie Dragon, or Terrorgeist heal, but there are other ways to heal it as well on top of that D3. So if you think about this big, really tough monster coming at you and doing lots of damage, you can keep healing it up, so just keep damaging and damaging and damaging. So good advice for synergy that you can start to build in. What about something like the Vargulf? So the Vargulf Courtier, which is something that some people like to choose, some people don't like to choose. It's a bit of a utility hero. And I call that out because the other heroes, in my opinion, are heavily synergized to the units that we choose. So you probably wouldn't take a ghoul hero if you're not going to take ghouls. So anyone want to give me some advice around the Vargulf?
So I think the Vargulf, I would just run another Arch Regent if I were you. I wouldn't even bother putting a Vargulf in, and I'd use that second Arch Regent to bring a Vargulf onto the board. The Vargulf is awesome, but a second Arch Regent, you can bring 2 Vargulfs in, and you find that they're very, very handy in like Blisterkin, where you go real Flayer heavy armies, because the Vargulf allows you to bring back your bigger models, not just your ghouls sort of thing. The Vargulf is really good. It's a really good sniping character, and there's a lot of little subtle things with it. So, if a spell's cast within range, and if you've got an abhorrent within range, it gets, re-rolls and extra attacks and stuff like that. But yeah, it is a good shout, but I don't know if you'd take it over just another Arch Regent and summon one on, because you've got that versatility to either summon it on or summon on 20 ghouls or some more flayers or horrors, and then you get another 2 spells. And like you said earlier, Coach, the Flesh Eater Courts kind of lack in amount of spells, so another 2 spells and then be able to bring one on. That's how I would run it. Bill, you might disagree, but
no,
yeah.
I mean, the character itself, again, tremendous utility, and it can do a lot of different things. It's fast, it keeps up with units, but me in general, I don't like spending points on things that I can get for free. So, spend the points on the Arch Regent and get one for free if the situation needs it. If you have hero scoring missions, I won't bring on 20 ghouls. I'll bring on a Vargulf.
Yeah. Or if you find yourself with a unit of 6 flayers or horrors far up on the other end of the board, then bring him on instead. It's very situational, and it's a really good mental mind game to play with your opponents too, because in the back of their head they've always got, what's he going to bring on? When is he or she going to bring that on? Where and what kind of damage is it going to cause? And your hero scoring missions is massive, because the movement on the Vargulf is huge. It's just that high movement value makes such a difference.
That being said, I'm sure we're going to go into it more when we get into specific builds, but he's a requirement for the Royal Mordants Battalion, which is an outstanding battalion. So, yeah, you may take him there.
Yeah. I guess, where I wanted to go with this is, first off, is it a good selection? I think generally, yes. The Vargulf can be a good option. Are there ways to sneak it into your list without paying for it? Absolutely, you guys have pulled it out. Correct me if I'm wrong, the Royal Zombie Dragon can also summon the Vargulf because it has the keyword Courtier. So,
yes.
So depending on the situation, you may want to bring in a Vargulf, and it is a good hero, but as it currently stands, when we look at the match play points for 2019, for 40 points difference, I could bring on that the Arch Regent, and have that versatility versus taking on the Vargulf. So, and obviously, if you have to take it for a battalion, different story, but it's a good hero.
80 points difference, I think, between the Vargulf and the Abhorrent. I think Abhorrent's 240, isn't it? And the Vargulf's 160. It's 160.
Yeah.
So
actually, this may be pre-General's Handbook, so this might be updated for General's Handbook. Ignore the points there. The battlefield roles are the same, but you kind of get the point. The
just
point
by
is,
what you're saying, it's still accurate. Yes. Yeah. Like
And who knows what's going to happen in General's Handbook 2020? But as it stands, if you can find the additional points, take the Arch Regent. If you have to take one, it's still a good choice.
Yeah, that's right. Correct.
What about our others? We've got our Kroopf Courtier, we also have the Infernal, and we also have the Kroopf Courtier. Are they good choices? Do we like them? Why would you bring them? Why wouldn't you bring them?
I think you would take the only one I would probably take, and it's more out of necessity for the battalion King's Ghouls, is the Kroopf Courtier. He helps you bring back your ghouls, and then in the King's Ghouls as well, he also provides immunity to battle shock. So if you're running a unit of 40 or unit of 20, 30 even, it's very, very handy. In terms of the Kroopf Haunter and the Kroopf Infernal Courtier, I don't know. Maybe you take another unit of the Horrors or the Flayers and then just summon on a Vargulf, or bring a Vargulf instead, because it does the same job. I don't know. I don't think they're worth their points. Drop them by 20 points and they might be worth it. And it's also really awkward because you have to build a Courtier out of your unit of 3 Flayers or Horrors that you get in a packet. So, and the same with the Ghoul Courtier as well. So you buy a box of 20, and then you've got to make your Courtier out of one of those 20, which leaves you with 19 Ghouls. So it's the same sort of thing. You basically got to sacrifice a box to build them as well. So I don't know. I don't know if they're quite worth it.
Yeah, I mean, my current build, I've been playing an Infernal Courtier, but that's largely driven by the fact that I've been running Dead Watch.
Yeah.
So he's a requirement for that.
Yeah.
But I mean, some pretty similar to the Vargulf. If you're running heavy flare, he's a fast hero. Can keep your deathless minions up. He can resummon the guys back if they died. So I mean, there's value to him. But again, it goes back to you can get him for free, and unless you're filling the battalion, you're typically your points are better spent elsewhere.
And I think that's the only time you see him is when you play a battalion. That's the only time people tend to bring those Courtiers, because the Vargulf you can summon on. It's just, I've never seen anyone run a Courtier outside of a battalion. What about you, Bill? Have you seen or know of anyone else that's done that, or
not at the high level competitive end?
Yeah,
I mean, maybe more fun or fluffy lists or narrative or something, but not if you're trying to go for super competitive.
Yeah. I think it's worth calling out when you start looking at your army, and we've talked generically about summoning. There is only limited summoning in Flesh Eater Court. So as you're building your list, think about things that if you were going to summon, what are the ideal things? And potentially that Vargulf is a great summon because it has versatility between the serfs and the knights. And we'll talk a bit more about when we get into units, but it's quite versatile. The thing that, the reason why you'd either want to take one in your army or summon one, obviously they benefit the unit they're going with. So the Ghoul hero would benefit the Ghouls on foot. But also it would allow them to have that 6-up Deathless save or the Courtier save. So, you're making your units more durable. And things like the Vargulf can bring models back. So,
well, and they all count as heroes too, which allows you to use your Feeding Frenzy. So if you run them with the unit, there you've got your Feeding Frenzy with that unit as well. So, because that can come from any hero. It doesn't have to be a general. So that's
the
another.
And the Infernal are very, very valuable in that regard. They're both super fast, so they can keep up with your damage pushers.
So if I think about this, things like the Infernal and the Ghoul hero, the Ghast Courtier, the Haunter Courtier, and the Infernal, they're good choices. They're good choices. Does something like the Vargulf hero give us better options because it's more versatile? Yes. Does it do everything those heroes do? No. Is there ways to summon these heroes for free? Yes. Do some of the battalions later force us to choose some of these heroes? Yes. So I guess if I wind this back for a second, especially for a new person who's thinking about building an army, I would look at some of my summoning options, and I would definitely get some of these heroes, and I'd have them in my toolkit. Whether I summon them, whether I pay for them, I would have them up my sleeve. Is that a fair
No, that's
umbrella?
fair. That's fair. And I think, the other thing I'd say is at the minimum, depending on how many games you can fit into your schedule, play games with all this stuff, because I mean, if they're that's the only way you're going to know what situations those summons are valuable in. If you only decide that you're going to use them as summons, you're never going to know when the right time to use them if you're not familiar with how they work. So even if they're not in your super optimized build, play games with them.
Yeah. And you will use them, whether you summon them, whether you pay for them in points, you will use these guys. So do keep that in mind, I guess, is where I'm trying to go with it. But definitely there's a way to bring them on for free, and we all love free.
Yeah, free stuff. Gotta love free stuff.
If it's free, it's for me. That's what I always say.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah, that's my slogan when I go to like the business clubs when I fly for work. I'm like, if it's free, it's for me. I'll take it.
Free food's the worst, man. I can't hold myself back.
No wonder you're a ghoul player, just feasting on the blood and the bones of your opponents.
Yeah, I'm delusional. I think I'm really fit as well, but I'm not.
And is there anything else you'd want to add to that, or we kind of acknowledged all the different heroes? And I think the heroes will really, in my opinion, become clearer when we start picking our units. So right now we've talked very generically about heroes, but the synergies are about to come.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I'd mention in the leaders is that, if you notice in the notes section with the flares and the horrors, you can use that Haunter Courtier and the Infernal to unlock them as battle line. So, I mean, if you're going for that as a specific theme, or if you're like me and you don't like spending points on ghouls, you can use that as a tool to fill battle line.
Awesome segue. So we're talking battle line. We're talking about a unit selection now. So generically, everyone in Flesh Eater Courts has access to Crypt Ghouls. Now you can take them in units of 10 up to 40. Then you have different options to unlock different battle line choices depending on how you build your list. So if you choose the Grizzlegore sub-allegiance, you can take a Royal Terrorgeist or a Royal Zombie Dragon as battle line. There's no hero on that. Alternatively, if you have a Crypt Infernal Courtier, or Kroopf Layers can be battle line. Or if you take Blister Skin as well.
Yeah, if you take your Grand Courts, they unlock battle line.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in Hallow Morn, if your general is a Crypt Haunter Courtier, you also get the horrors as battle line.
Yeah, so it's slightly different to some of the other armies. Most other armies use certain generals unlock different battle lines, where this is more Grand Courts unlock battle line. If you run Grizzlegore, Blisterkin, Hallowmorn, then it gives you access to different battle line units, which basically just lowers the if you're going for Flayer heavy or Dragon heavy, you don't have to then spend 100 points on 3 units of ghouls. 300 points wasted, you can then invest more into your Flayers or Horrors or Dragons. So, yeah.
Yeah, it is the Grand Court or the Courtier.
Yeah,
so that's real important with like the Royal Mordants build, because then you could have Flares and Horrors as battle line.
So under Grizzlegore, basically under Grizzlegore, it's Terrorgeist and Zombie Dragons are battle line.
And only unridden ones, so no heroes. Yep, just the standard guys.
Unridden. But you're 100% correct. So with Blister Skin, if I wanted Flayers as battle line, if I wanted Flayers as battle line, I could go Blister Skin, or in any of the other sub-allegiances, I just have to choose my Crypt Infernal Courtier as the general. So yes. I could be Grizzlegore and have Flayers as battle line, only if the general is the Crypt Infernal Courtier. So there's 2 options. Yeah,
there is, but it's making one of those guys your general is not. I don't know if it's the best shout, because you need to run them with your units basically to make them worthwhile. They just get blown off the board really quickly when they're your general. So it's definitely very, very catered towards the Grand Courts, I think.
Yeah. No, I just want to call out the rules first. And
Yeah,
then we'll
sorry,
get in.
yeah.
No,
Right.
that's good. I just want to call out that there are options, and then we can choose the best way around it. So
Yeah.
let's talk generic crypt ghouls first. So that's available to everyone as a battle line option. If you're playing match play, you have to have at least 3 battle line units. You can take a unit of as small as 10 up to 40. Do we like
discount.
ghoul? And there is a discount as well. So if
Yeah.
you take the maximum size, you do get a slight discount as well. So ghouls as battle line. It's probably our unit that has the most bodies. So if we want to start kind of seizing objectives or like zoning out the board, ghouls are a great choice. Do we like them in a competitive build? And how many do we take in a list? Do we take 3 units? Do we take them at max size? Do we take them at small sizes? What's our general thoughts, Bill?
I love them.
Jesse loves them. What's Bill's
Yeah,
thoughts?
so this is I was hesitant to get to the battle line section of this discussion because I think I disagree with the majority of folks, and I think this is probably going to be the first time Jesse and I disagree this stream. So I'm not a big fan of horrors, ghouls, especially for their points. 100 points for 10. It's a great balancing factor for the book. I don't disagree that that's a good price point, but for me, I don't like spending the points on ghouls. I view that as almost like a tax. So that's kind of what's been putting me closer to these either blister skin or some build that brings in other battle line options. Just because I don't like spending that points on it. That being said, as you mentioned, you need the bodies. So what I've been kind of doing lately is making my flares or horrors battle line. And then I get my bodies by allying in zombies. So that's actually been a huge tool, saves you a bunch of points. And if you look at the battlefield roles that they fill, it's the same thing for a fraction of the cost. So my general take, I try to include ghouls as little as possible in a competitive build.
And before I go to Jesse and his love for ghouls, when you look at them as battle line, they are expensive. When you compare that to some of the other battle line choices in other books, 100 points is expensive, but there are some things in there that can make them cool. So Jesse,
they can be good. You just you invest a lot of points in them themselves, and then a lot of points in the support pieces.
Yeah.
What are the points
for
zombies?
Pardon?
What are the points for zombies? Just out of curiosity.
So typically I take units of 30, so it would be 180 for 30 versus 300 for 30.
Yeah, that's a really good point of contention. Like I couldn't agree more with the cost of ghouls. So that for me, that's their biggest downfall. I do love them. I take 80 to most tournaments, and like I said, I painted 40 before the book was out, so I was bloody committed to ghouls, I'll tell you. But
yeah, I think I'm in the neighborhood of like 240 painted because I've played forever.
Yeah,
so it breaks my heart, but
I reckon those last 200 would have been terrible. But yeah, so I agree with the points. They are expensive, and in terms of other 100-point units, they probably don't do as much work. But in agreeing with you, Anthony, they are priced correctly. I don't think they should be any cheaper. I don't think they should be any more expensive. I think they're sitting in the sweet spot. They're a tax you need to take, and it also makes you have to build your lists either around them or avoid them, basically. But they benefit from all of your faction, your faction abilities, your spells, your endless spells. For me, that 100 points, when you synergize with that 100 points per 10, that's when they become worth their points. Like I said, I usually take 80 to most tournaments, and then there has been times where I've taken 100, including summoning, and they've won me countless games. The Ghouls, I think they are great. I'd rather spend 100 points on 10 Ghouls than 5 Liberators, so that's the way I look at it.
Yeah. And look, there are some rewards as well. So if you take a unit of 20 or more, you get +1 attack characteristic, and they're going to reroll ones to hit if they're within 18 inches, wholly within 18 inches of an aberrant. So
and you can then add the D3 from the abhorrent as well, D3 attacks. So you've got them up to 5 attacks, and then if you're your little guy, if you're running the courtier with them and he manages to kill a model first, they get extra attacks again. So they are. It's that synergy, which is why I reckon 100 points is a sweet spot. But you are right, Bill. It's very expensive. They are an expensive unit, and now I'm going to be thinking about zombies because that 180 points for 30 zombies is pretty bloody good.
Yeah, and I mean, if you really, I've tried. Your ally is max is 400, right? So you can do 60 zombies and stay in that ally max.
Yeah, and that gives you your bodies too.
Right.
They wouldn't get any. They wouldn't get any like 5-up, 6-up saves, though, would they? No, but
no, I mean
with
they're
that
there
many,
to block
you don't
out
need
the
it.
board, score objectives, and be a screen if somebody wants to come at you.
And if someone wants to pump 30 wounds into 180 points, go for it. That's a dragon running around causing carnage for you, I suppose, isn't it?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point. I'm going to be thinking about zombies now. So
I'll send you my list.
A bit of list tech happening here, guys, live on stream. So ghouls are a good option. It's definitely the best way to inherently in our army get bodies. But yes, when we get to our allies, we'll find some secret list tech. We have some other battle line choices. We've got our Kroopf Layers. Now, Kroopf Layers synergize really well with the Infernal Courtier. Do we like flayers if we want to go down this as a battle line choice?
I love flares. That's my main build right now is flares. They're fast. They can hit hard. I mean, they still need to be buffed, but really just their speed and even at the little 3-man units can handle a lot of things that like to sit on objectives. So they have tremendous utility.
They move 12. They have 4 wounds each. They've got a pretty good screaming attack, so they've got a shooting attack as well as a combat attack. What do flayers offer that horrors don't offer?
Speed,
flying, rend, and mortal wounds.
Yeah,
so
everything.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, the horrors are like a wet paper towel.
Yeah, I mean the horrors still have good damage, but they need to basically be aimed at a unit that's just put it right in front of them, and they can't have armor.
And they have to be within range of one of your archer agents. An abhorrent as well. I think otherwise, or I've found that they just do nothing. If they're not within range of a dragon or your abhorrent archer agent, they're just, I don't know, they don't do much. Without those rerolls to hit on a 4-up, your 12 attacks drop very, very quickly to 6 hits and then 3 wounds, if that, with no rend. It just the flayers are definitely a lot better than the horrors, in my opinion.
And every buff that you put on them, I mean, their value just goes up more. So especially in the speed department, they're 12 inches base, but in a basic blister skin build, with 2 spells, those guys are moving 24. So I mean,
because you can cast the what's it called, the
you can do spectral host for run and charge.
Yeah,
and
you can do that.
Do the transformation. I can't recall the exact name, but that adds
deranged transformation. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking.
Yeah, that adds a wound profile to it, and then blister skin is a base 2. So you're
up to 20 without even blinking.
Yeah. Which is crazy, right? Like that is straight up on objective. That's straight up in opponents' faces in most scenarios in turn 1.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's pretty awesome. And you're right. They get 4 attacks each. Their hit and to wound stats are quite generous. They've got rend. They've got damage. They're doing mortal wounds. They can fly. They're super fast. Even if you weren't going to take blister skin, and even if you weren't going to take a Crypt Infernal Courtier, these guys, in my opinion, are still worth taking, even if they aren't battle line. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Because even those little 3-man units, if you're playing a mission where you have board center objectives, you can invest 170 points to score that turn, and if your opponent kills them, it's fine, right? It's a little small unit, not a big deal. You're usually positioning yourself to countercharge. So I mean that unit is perfect for that. They're going to get on any objective, center board, or even further back, and it's minimal points investment to score towards the victory.
And they've also got the knight's keyword, so they are summonable if the hero can summon a knight. So Again, having them in your toolbox, even at minimum, is still a great decision if you don't pay for them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But I love flayers. I'm a big fan of flayers. I know my co-host Liam is a big fan of crypt horrors. And Jesse, anything you'd want to add on flayers before we talk about the other side, which is the horror build?
Just if you're starting out, don't bank on their shooting. A lot of the meta, like Bill was talking about earlier, most armies have like bravery 10 that I come against. It's a lot of the bravery has gone right up. You might get the occasional, especially when you're starting out, you might end up playing against some, Iron Jaws or something with some lower bravery, but their shooting isn't the greatest, so don't bank on that. But their movement, definitely, that's their strongest point, 100%. So they do have shooting. It's a nice little bonus, but the amount of bravery 10 you come up against in AOS at the moment is just, it makes it pretty much null and void, really, that shooting a lot of the time, unless you're in combat with them. So
yeah, so you roll 2d6. So the shooting attack is basically you roll 2d6, and if it's higher than the unit's bravery, they suffer a mortal wound. So you can do that for every flayer. But then if you're not within 3 inches, you subtract 2.
That's
so
right.
if you're up against a death unit or a demon which has bravery 10, you would need to roll a 12 unless you're in combat to do mortal wounds. So
exactly.
It's pretty. It's not. Yeah, I wouldn't rely on it. And if you were going to build around it, which there are some endless spells you can subtract bravery and stuff, it's still a pretty dodgy build. It probably wouldn't yield that much. Bill, would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. The other thing I'd add for flares is there's a certain beauty to using that fly to piling in over a screen and attacking something behind it. So that's something huge that horrors just cannot do.
Yeah, and with spectral hosts, the ability to run and charge as well, because they do fly, that's huge as well. So 26-inch move and then charge, it's pretty good.
Yep. It's insane. It means like those armies, like for example, a Hallowheart, which I'm not using anymore. But if I've got these wizards sitting behind a block of bodies, whether it's like Phoenix Guard, or I'm a Grot player with all these bodies, you can potentially jump those screens with your fly, with really long charges or even middle range charges, or depending on how I've positioned. Yeah, you're 100% correct. That pile-in could actually jump over the base. Because it flies. So tactically, you could harass a lot of units.
And it's usually overkill, but there is something to be said for, again, putting those same units into a Mordant. And then that 24-inch move unit is moving 48. So yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff you can do.
And there are artifacts as well that can bring down the bravery. Omni in the chat's talked about the Grim Garland, which we'll talk about a bit later when we customize. But yes, we can do more stuff with bravery, but generically, with a lot of bravery 10 right now, it's not a super reliable build.
I agree.
Other side of the fence, we've got our horrors. So we've got our horror choices again. They are Battle Line if you're Hollow Morn, or if you're taking a Crypt, the Haunted Courtier. Now we know that it doesn't have Rend. We know that it does do a lot more damage. They have less attacks. They don't have a screaming attack. What do you guys think about the horrors over the flayers? Are there uses for them? Is there positions that these guys are superior?
Not that I've found.
You hands up. You're just a flayer man. Just flayer.
If you're going to choose one or the other, you would definitely choose flayers. Undoubtedly. I mean, I don't even know what is it, Hollow Morn? I'm not even sure what that does, to be honest. I've never seen someone run it, so I haven't. It's been a long time since I've read it, so yeah, I don't know. Horrors, when you compare them against flayers, they just don't do enough. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I think really the only place is going to be dependent on your meta. So if you have people that aren't playing high armor save, then if you get the buffs lined up, they can do more damage. But when it's a wild card on the meta, the flares are just better.
Yeah, the Hollow Morn Grand Court doesn't do much. It adds an extra inch to their movement and gives them some extra attacks. But when you look at the Blisterkin with +2, and then that's superior with a unit that can actually move a lot more and do a lot more damage, on average, or reliably. So yeah, I don't rate horrors very much personally.
I know 6 months ago when Liam was running the Hollowmorn with horrors quite successfully, it wasn't in the meta of Ossiarch Bone Reapers and Petrifix Elite. And I know, yes, there's a weight of dice and you can have like a whole bunch of attacks, and you're just purely rolling lots of dice, and, 6s do 3 damage instead of 2. But in this not high rend, but so really high armor saves going around right now, these guys could be bouncing off opponents potentially depending on your matchup. So I think currently with the speed that Flayers offer, the rend that it offers, the mortal wounds that it offers, I probably tend to agree with you right now that that Flayers are the superior over the horrors. But if we ever get into a world where there's lots of bodies, lots of hordes, lots of zombies and grots and free guild and just generic little battle line, the horrors may have a place.
I think the two things the Flayers have got going for them over the horrors is the rend, like you said, is one of the big ones, and doing mortal wounds on a hit roll rather than a wound roll. You always roll more hit dice than you are wound dice. So that's always a massive benefit. Anytime you're doing exploding 6s on a wound, it's never as good as exploding 6s on a hit. So
yeah, and the book changed that to be in addition to. So before the new book came out, the Flares, it was always your attack sequence stopped. So I was playing horrors more than that, and because of the meta difference. But with it being in addition to, and on the unmodified 6, that just pushed them over.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got 2 other battle line choices. So horrors, not really currently right now. Flayers are probably superior than horrors. If I had to start collecting box, I would probably suggest to you to build Flayers before horrors. There probably is a use for them right now. Probably not as strong as Flayers, but who knows what's coming down the line. We have 2 other battle line choices depending on if you are Grizzlegore or not. Should you be Grizzlegore, you can take the Royal Zombie Dragon or the Royal Terrorgeist unmounted, so no hero on top. This is a unheroed dude or girl. They are 300 points a pop. Do we like the idea of Royal Terrorgeist or Royal Zombie Dragons as battle line? And would you take them if they weren't battle line? So it's probably like a 2-part question. So straight up for me, I love them both. I think they both have use cases. We talked about the hero one already, but first off, let's talk Terrorgeist. Do we like the Terrorgeist as battle line?
If you're running the Grand Court, definitely. If you're running, Grizzlegore, without a doubt, it basically means they're worth 300 points, but you don't have to spend 100 points on Ghouls, so they're 200 points in my eyes. If you're running Grizzlegore, it's great, but you do need those bodies. So zombies, perfect, 180. Now you've opened my mind to the zombies. I just can't stop thinking about how good they are. Yeah, especially with the Grizzlegore, it gives you those bodies as well. So they're great. The first time I played against Flesh Eater Courts was against Liam, and he was running 4 dragons. He had to paint it up as all the Pokemon, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, and he had his general, and they were pretty nasty. They were very, very nasty. I think you find the Terrorgeist is not as good without the reroll to more, but that's still really, really good. Bill, you've probably played with it more than I have, so you're probably a bit better. I don't know, do you run them as just dragons or not?
I've actually stayed away from the Grizzlegore because
yeah, so have I. I didn't want to be filth. I'm filth enough as it is.
Well, it's a big body count detriment, right, as you mentioned. And the other part of it is when you play those without any heroes on it, they're not nearly as independent. So when you have a big 300-point unit or a big 300-point model, you need to be able to rely on that to go to a part of the board and do what it needs to do. And without the hero on the back, they really can't do that. They can't proc the feeding frenzy on their own. You're not going to have the mount traits on it. So I just think that there's a lot better things to spend the 300 points on personally. But that being said, it does get you away from the ghoul tax. So there's always something to be said for that.
I think as well for people starting out, it's with your 3 or 4 boxes of start collecting. They are a good shout because then you can run a big unit of ghouls and then you can run a couple of these dragons. If you're starting out, it's a great way to learn the game. You've only got to remember 2 or 3 profiles. You get some magic, you get some big monsters, you get your battle line ghouls. I honestly think they are a great starter army.
And it's just really cool.
And cool as hell. They've got they're awesome. They're such awesome models. I think they're good. I haven't ran them. I've played against them though, and they hurt. So especially when I'm playing against Liam. Liam is a good player, and he's quite tactful. It was a very close game, but he just wiped my Daughters of Cain off the board with all of his dragons. So
If you're gonna, from my opinion, because I did build, I built an OG Grizzlegore before Grizzlegore was Grizzlegore. So in the old book, there was a battalion called the Royal Menagerie that forced you to take a bunch of Terrorgeists and zombie dragons, and I built around that. And I found the reason you go down this build, yes, it's a low model count. Yes, it's a whole bunch of dragons. They have 14 wounds. They have some really damage potential. And obviously what you can do as well is really fly them up the board, pin your opponent in combat while your ghouls or your flayers or your horrors and your characters are scoring the objective points, while these big monsters are just doing damage and holding your opponent up. So there's a lot of benefits. Go on.
If you can get deranged transformation, I think that's what it is, deranged transformation or whatever it is, the extra 5 up save on them, then they do real. Oh yeah, unholy vitality. That's the one. They do become an issue then as well because, you've got that extra 5 up save, and you can cast it on them and fly them up the board, and your general's still alive, or your mounted dragon is still alive. So there is a lot to be said for that as well.
And we've already talked about the chalice. We can use the chalice to heal them up. We've got heroes that can synergize them and get them to re-roll. You got things like Grizzlegore or some of the courts that allow you to re-rolls or do different things. So there's some really easy ways to bump up the Royal Terrorgeist and or the Zombie Dragon. If you're probably looking at raw potential of damage, I go the Terrorgeist. If you want a bit more versatility, you go the Zombie Dragon. That's from my observations and also me playing with them.
Yeah, I think that the Terrorgeist is definitely superior. But I mean, if I played against someone and it was modeled as a dragon, a zombie dragon, and they said it was a Terrorgeist, I'd be like, that's fine, man. Whatever. We're playing AOS. We're pushing toy soldiers across the board. Model it up how you want. Tell me what it is. If it's close enough, I'm not going to argue the point. Like, come on, guys, it's a game. Like play them, build one of each, and then play them how you see fit. As long as you're clear, like it gives you that versatility to be able to try everything out. And I don't think there's a TO in the land that would say, that's modeled as a zombie dragon, but your list says it's a Terrorgeist. Like they're both dragons. It's probably easier to tell which one's which. That way you can say, oh, that's got this attached to it, not that one. It's got this artifact or whatever. So, if I were starting out, I would definitely be building one of each and then play him. Don't glue your little rider on him, and then you can just blue tack him on and off as you need him and figure it out. Best starter army, I reckon. This and Beast Claw Raiders,
The 3 rules that really get me for the Terrorgeist over the Zombie Dragon, this is my argument, would be the Gaping Maw. So unmodified hit rolls of 6 does 6 damage. So an unwounded Terrorgeist is going to have 4 attacks, and on a 6 they're going to do straight 6 down. The Fang Maw. Sorry, the Fang Maw is 3. So straight 3. Yeah, I was looking at the wrong profile. So straight 6 does mortal wounds. You've got a rule that a lot of people forget about. I love it. It's infested. So basically, when the model is slain, units within 3 inches of it suffer D3 mortal wounds as it kind of explodes.
You love it until you've got your own models around it as well when that happens.
Sure, but if you're running like a Grizzlegore and you've got low model counts, they're probably not going to exploit each other.
Yeah, that's right. Definitely.
And then finally, if it's within 6 inches of a aberrant, it's going to heal D3 wounds as well. So if you're running it up with a leader on a Terrorgeist or a zombie dragon, straight up it's now healing, as well as you can heal it with the chalice. So
with that Archregent, you can put your D3 attacks onto those dragons as well, because that's not just a hero, that's any unit. So you can basically give it an extra 5-up save, an extra up to D3 attacks, and then just send it up the board. Run away, dragon, go fly, go kill some things. They're very versatile, and even without the hero on it, they are very good. The Terrorgeist definitely way better than the zombie dragon. The only reason I argued for the zombie dragon earlier is for a point of difference. So, yeah, Terrorgeist every day.
Yeah, cool. But they are a big points cost, and you're only getting one model. So to hold up an objective is very hard with a Terrorgeist or a zombie dragon. So just keep that in mind.
Definitely.
Any other thoughts around the unit selection? We do have the Underworld's Warband, which we can bring into match play. I don't know the points off the top of my head, but I haven't seen a lot of people using the Underworld's Warband for Flesh Eater Courts.
You're going to force me to look it up, because I honestly don't think I've even read the rules.
I'll look it up now. 120, I think. Yeah, 120 points. And I don't even know what it does. I think I've looked at it and it wasn't worth taking. It's not really, I don't know. I couldn't tell you, to be honest.
I guess the challenge with this, and as I just quickly bring up the Grim Watch. So what you get is a bunch of ghouls. So you get 6 models for your points investment. The 2 key rule abilities is 1, you get to roll the dice before you allocate a wound or a mortal wound to a friendly Duke Crackmow while he's within 3 of the unit, and on 4+, it goes on to the unit as opposed to the hero. And then 2, add 1 to the damage inflicted by each successful attack made that targets a monster. So it's almost like this little unit that's going to run around, probably attack objectives, and it's probably one of those few ones that doesn't require a synergy of a Flayer, a Courtier hero. The Ghoul hero just kind of runs off and does its own little thing.
Yeah, I'm looking it up at the moment. Apparently, so you can bring your guys back as well, and you can also give him the D3 attack. So it might actually be, I don't know, it might be worth taking just to try it out. Even if you got 120 points spare, it might be a better shout than trying to get 10 more ghouls into the list or something like that. So I don't know. I've never played it. I've not really looked into it, but there might be something there.
I just find with Flesh Eater Courts, you run out of points really quickly because your monsters or your elite heroes, your elite units, you just want more of them. You want more horrors, more flayers. You want more Terrorgeists. You just want more of those guys.
Yeah, it's actually really hard to round out to 2,000 points a lot of the time. You always find yourself 30, 40 points spare. And then it's like, oh, great. And then you shuffle some things around. It's just, the big monsters, you're looking at 800 points pretty quick, or 700 points if you ride him without a hero. And then, battle line. Yeah, you do run out of points very, very quickly.
Any other comments you guys want to make about the units? I think we've kind of talked about the units now. We've gone through all of them.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've covered them pretty thoroughly.
There's not many. So
no, that's right. I think the only other thing to touch on would be maybe allies.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. But allies and battalions are coming next.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. There you go. Look at that.
Don't you ruin Christmas, Jesse. Yeah, love the segue. Thanks, Coach. So you do have some allies. You've got your Death Walkers, your Dead Lords, and your Dead Mages. Now, these aren't allegiances. When you're looking this going, wait a second, I've never seen a battle tome Death Mages. These are coming from Legions of Nagash. Now, you don't get to ally into the whole of Legions of Nagash, only those keywords within the book. So you've got your Dead Walkers, and that's where your zombies are coming from, Bill.
Yep.
We've got your Death Lords, which are I can't remember, and then your Death Mages, which are like your Necromancers and stuff.
Yeah.
In your ally pool, so we know the benefits of zombies, we can bring those in cheap bodies. Is there any other heroes you might bring into the fold, or allies?
I think the only other one that I've looked at and have seen as well used very well is the corpse cart, with the extra extra casting, extra +1 to casting. With the you've got artifacts that give you another +1. Stand in some arcane terrain, you're +3 to spells. It turns that Archregent into a really, really strong buff piece, dispel piece. Corpse cart and zombies, I think, and funnily enough, they go together really well. So
both of those are in almost every build. 30 zombies and a corpse cart. It's just
I think I might have to change mine.
it's really powerful. You don't have to get your casting from the precious artifacts that you need. So I mean, it's not often thought about this way as much, but that corpse cart base is actually pretty decent size. So put it on the objective. You can use it as another tool to block out the backfield. I mean, you can lock a whole corner down from teleporters with just a corpse cart.
Currently out of stock online in Australia though, so I'm trying to find one.
I was just seeing if a Vampire Lord could be allied in, and no, he doesn't have the correct keywords. Because a Vampire Lord would be awesome. Unfortunately, not an option for us.
Yeah. No such luck.
Unlucky. And the Necromancer used to be a really good ally, but they've changed the War Scroll, and he now can't. Van Hale's Dance Macabre.
I was going to ask that if that was how it used to be. If you could Van Hale.
It used to be just a death keyword. Now it is summonable, and I just looked and I was playing with my phone, and Ghouls don't have the summonable keyword, nor do Flayers or Horrors. So that doesn't interact. But you probably could do it with zombies if you wanted to go down that route.
And then back when it did work, they weren't allowed as allies. So they changed that stuff pretty quickly.
Damn them. You've got a whole bunch of additional things you can do. You can build around these battalions. So you guys have a lot of battalion options, and I mean a lot, which is awesome, but also very confusing. So you do have your overarching one, the Cannibal Court, which unless you're playing in a bazillion point match play game, you're probably not going to take Cannibal Court. But you will be able to take things like the Royal Family, the Ardents of the Court. You've got Dead Watch, you've got the Arbiter, you've got the Ghoul Patrol, King's Ghouls, Royal Mordants, and Royal Menagerie. Now, are all of these guys good choices, or is there a couple of battalions just stand out a little higher than the others?
Definitely, there's a couple that stand out. When Grizzlegore was at its peak, Royal Family, which is the one Archregent or Ghoul King on Terrorgeist or Zombie Dragon, and then 2 to 6 Ghoul Kings, Abhorrent Ghoul Kings. I saw that ran, 2 Archregents, and then a Dragon, and then run another 2 Dragons. It's basically like turns your army into a 6-unit army. And then, you get to roll an extra dice for the Courtier when determining how many slain models to bring back. So, you get your Vargulf with a unit of 6 Flayers or something like that. It's not bad. Royal Family's great. King's Ghouls, Ghoul Patrol, they do have a few really, really good ones. What do you tend to run, Bill, with your lists?
Well, when I look at battalions, of course, the first thing I look at is the ability, right? What's it going to do? How's it going to force multiply? What can I get for it? And then the very next thing I look at is, what am I considering tax? So beyond the points cost of the battalion itself, how many units am I going to have to take that I normally wouldn't? So, the 2 that I kind of jump to typically are Dead Watch, because really your only tax unit is the Courtier, and even that has value.
It's not really attacked.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it has value because it's going to babysit the flares. And then the second that I'll typically go to is, I've talked about it a couple times now, and that's the Royal Mordants. That one I run a little bit less, only because it does have the Ghouls and I guess the Vargulf. But Dead Watch has been really what I'm focusing on, less for the ability, more for just the drop count, bringing the drop count down and just getting the extra artifact. Yeah,
so I personally, I look more towards Ghoul Patrol and King's Ghouls, but that's, I think your allergicness to ghouls is probably the reason why you chose otherwise, which, it shows how different we are as competitive players as well. But yeah, Ghoul Patrol for me and the King's Ghouls. The King's Ghouls, like you said, the tax is on the for me, though, the unit of horrors in the King's Ghouls really hurts. That's wasted points as far as I'm concerned, because I don't think the horrors are worth taking. If that was a unit of flayers, that would be the perfect battalion for me. But, you know, not having to take battle shock tests on a unit of 40 ghouls and then also being able to bring them back with the courtier, that's great as far as I'm concerned. And then ghoul patrol, just for board control, is massive. And that was one that people used to run a lot in the old book as well, wasn't it, Magro?
Yeah, Ghoul Patrol. And still see it today, but what Ghoul Patrol allows you to do, guys, is it allows you to set up units in reserve as opposed to putting them on the table. So that can be very dangerous, whether you're taking big blocks of ghouls. You do have to take three units of ghouls to be sitting in this battalion. But it does give you some pretty cool ambushing abilities, but it has to happen in your first turn. So that's one to consider. And so was Dead Watch. Dead Watch used to be really popular. It still is, because it allows you to, one unit from the battalion, so one of your 3 Kroopf Layers, allows you to, if one unit from this battalion is within 3 inches of an enemy, it can make a pile-in move and attack with its melee weapons. So you can do basically a hero phase attack, and then obviously attack again in your combat phase.
And then attack again with the double pile-in later on. So
correct.
Yeah,
correct. So,
yeah,
so straight away, you start to see that, you know, these flayers with their high move, you could essentially attack them with them 3 times a turn.
Yeah, I think that there was a lot of argument for running big units of flayers in the Dead Watch. Specifically, you just that one big unit and then run the courtier with it. You know, a unit of 9 flayers hitting 3 times in a turn is pretty strong.
Yeah, and the value goes up when you look at these armies that are kind of exceptionally sticky, right? Like Fire Slayers and OBR, and you know these hyper defense armies where that hero phase attack wouldn't really get value because you would just nuke everything. All of a sudden, you kind of need it.
I used to run the Royal Menagerie a lot. It did change in the new book, and the reason I don't run it in the new version of it is because the Royal Menagerie, it does allow you to heal an extra D3 wounds a turn, but they've got to be within 5 inches of each other from the battalion. So I find the strengths of running Terrorgeist or Zombie Dragon is keeping them independent of each other, or keeping them at least 10 to 12 inches. I think keeping them within 5 just kind of pigeonholes you too much a different part of the board. Which is why I'm no longer using the Royal Menagerie battalion.
I think the Royal Menagerie is good for lowering your drops and giving you an extra artifact. You probably would more likely take that for that rather than the battalion ability.
Correct.
Yeah,
it used to be able to give you extra move, and it used to be able to heal.
Yeah. You're definitely better off running those big threats away from one another. You'd hate to get caught up against 40 Skaven or a heap of chain rasps with 3 dragons and just have them wasted for a turn.
Yeah. Before I move on to the next question, I've got to give a shout out in the chat. I don't normally do this very often, but shout out to Tyler Pearson, aka Buckets, who's asked a really good question, and he's said, do we consider Mortarks using the death keyword? Now, we say that because a Mortark is a Death Lord, and looking at some of their command abilities, Neferata's command ability is generic to her. She can create a minus to hit bubble, and Manfred does allow you to do some reroll shenanigans on death. Now, and if you want a caster, you've got Arcan. I think from memory, Arcan now is a bit too expensive now to bring in as an ally, but Manfred and Neferata should be under the 400 points from memory. So could be some shenanigans in there to bring in a Death Lord. The only challenge that I have is you wouldn't get your Deathless shenanigans that they would normally get in a Legions of Nagash book.
Yeah, I think you've got your own models. Like Flesh Eater Courts already has a lot of the stuff that you need, and with command point immune to battle shock, you kind of I think it's a quite a big points investment that would be better spent on a Terrorgeist or another Archregent. Personally, that's my opinion. I don't know. I've never, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Arcan was in almost every single one of my lists pre-book, but now that we have the book, typically your points investment is better elsewhere.
And the army has drastically changed since the old book compared to the new too.
Yeah. And if Legions of Nagash gets updated, I think there might be something in there for Manfred. Manfred's a bit of a combat beast stick, or maybe Neferata, who can make your opponent harder to hit your Terrorgeists or your units. But it is a big point sink when you think about, do I take Manfred or Isabella, a Neferata, or do I take another Terrorgeist Ghoul King or a Zombie Dragon Ghoul King? I think that's a really tough decision to make, and I think sadly I'd have to go down the things that inherently are going to benefit my own army. Plus, obviously, they get to summon a unit for free as well. So I think it's a hard case to not take something inside your book.
Yeah, once you bring that summoning into it, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is something to be said about Neferata and the negative to hit, and using the Griff Feather Charm for another neg to hit. Having a dragon at neg 2 is pretty good, but Neferata is also pretty squishy. She, once she gets hit, she pretty much goes very quickly. And same for Manfred. If he gets in first, he's good, but against, some of the meta these days, Ironjaws and Slanesh, if Manfred goes towards something, and you're up on the top tables, he's probably going to die pretty quickly.
Yeah. Good call. We've built our list. I think you guys are giving me a really good understanding of the different units and how they work. What I want to do now is start to kind of bring it in and narrow it down even further and tailor it and customize it into a list that really stands out for me. So I want to be able to start looking at things like the sub-allegiances, the command traits, the artifacts, the spell laws, the endless spells that kind of work. So we'll kind of synergize this, and now we'll start to piece it all together. So the first piece I want to talk about is the sub-allegiances. So now we've got a flavor of, I want to go Flayers, I want to go Zombie Dragons, I want to go Ghouls. These things that might start kind of falling into place. So the first one we've got here is the Morgant Grand Court. So what are we going to get from that? We're going to get a whole bunch of stuff while I just stall you guys really quickly and I bring it up on screen. So what do I get for going down this court? The blood loyalty, so I can reroll hit rolls of 1s for friendly courtier units that are wholly within 12 of the Morghast serfs. So the ghouls are our serfs. In addition, while a friendly Morghast serf is wholly within 12 of friendly, the Boundless Ferocity ability activates if it has 10 or more models. What do we think of this one first before I go too deep in the rules? So the Morgant Grand Court.
So that first part, it's kind of lackluster, I think.
I was kind of struggling when I'm reading this, going,
If your courtier is going to be in combat, you want to make sure it's against another battle line chaff unit. Otherwise, he's going to die straight away. And there goes just resummoning. So yeah, it's kind of meh. That blood loyalty isn't great. The command ability's not too bad. If you have a big unit of 40 ghouls, gets wiped off, but it's only on a 4-up, so it's not something you can rely on. And then it's not. Yeah, I don't know. I don't rate it. I've looked over it and I've tried to make it work. It just, to me, from a pure theoretical point of view, I don't think there's enough in it to make it worth taking.
And Morgant doesn't unlock any battle line choices for us either.
No, and Bill would hate it because you have to use serfs. So
hey, I actually played this. I played a Morgant army with like 160 ghouls one time. But that was when you could spam the command ability until you got that 4-up. So
yeah, right.
Now that it's 50%, 50-50, no, not a big fan.
I think the key is going to be if you want to go the Morgant list, the big benefit to it is going to be the command ability, where you can use the command ability with a friendly serf. If a serf unit is destroyed, if you do so on a roll a dice on a 4+, a unit identical to this is going to be brought back. So it gets brought back 6.
It just hurts that you have to have a 4-wound character as your general, and that's the biggest thing. Like, it's so easy to snipe off a 4-wound character, and then you lose your command trait and your artifact. Admittedly, both quite lackluster, but having a 4-wound general.
For the immune to battle shock, just play the King's Ghouls Battalion.
Or run anything. Yeah, run any hero within range, and then just use a command point. It's not great. I think people usually breeze over that one pretty quickly.
Yeah,
We've
so
probably given it more
yeah.
due than it's worth.
Probably more people have read it now than anyone has read it. It's okay. It doesn't kind of like, I'm not inspired to build any lists, but if someone has and they've done really well, I'd love to hear about it. But for me personally, I think the others are just too superior. Like this one. So Halomorn is definitely a bit more attractive. And from memory, Halomorn unlocks our horrors as battle line.
Yeah, and this is the one Liam was running. Am I correct?
This is the one that Liam was running. I know he's a big advocate of Halomorn. Some of the things you're going to get is you can re-roll wound rolls of 1s for attack made by melee weapons by friendly Halomorn courtiers, and the knights
that's
as well.
Huge for their damage spike, right? For the 3.
Correct. And if you roll was it 6 to wound or 6 to hit? I can't remember.
6 to wound, it turns into 3 damage.
3 damage, not 2. So straight away you're doing 3 attacks. You re-roll your 1s, and the more of those 6s, you're doing 3 damage apiece. There wasn't any rend, but the pure weight of dice, you can do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Your command ability is going to allow you to run and charge. Add 1 to the run and charge rolls to your next hero phase. What else does it do? Add 1 to the attack characteristics and damage to the general. And then finally, after the model makes a charge, you can pick 1, and on a 2+ it suffers it does D3 mortal wounds, so it does some impacts.
Wounds. Yeah, this is good, and Liam ran it very, very well. When he was running it, he maxed out on his horrors, and really hunted for those 6s to wound. This is a good shout. It's not as good as Blisterkin, but it is. Yeah, there is something to be said. I think if Liam playing Halomorn come against Blisterskin, I think Blisterskin would end up on top.
The run and charge though from the command ability is quite attractive, and it kind of makes up for the movement that the horrors lack compared to flayers.
Yeah, but you can cast Spectral Host onto your flayers and give them run and charge, which then it kind of counteracts it. I think
really just the thing that sinks them right now is just Slaves to Darkness and OBR existing. Or just the no rend against them is just a showstopper.
Yeah, rent's huge at the moment, especially.
And that's what I kind of mentioned earlier when we were talking about horrors, is right now in our meta, if this comes up against OBR, you might as well not play, because they're just not going to get through that 3+ armor save with no rend. But if we move into a world where something is different, that could be a bit more attractive, but not right now.
Well, if your buddy that you play against is playing, the new Zinch horror spam, play horrors, because they're going to chew through those horrors better than flares will. Just a ton of damage against the low armor targets.
Or not,
and that's it.
Well,
that's it. It comes up against a horror. It comes up against a horror unit with a 10 pink horror splits out to basically 50 wounds when it gets to brimstones. That'll carve through that, but Absolutely. You're very match dependent.
Yeah.
Nighthaunt's good as well. Like as soon as you take rend out of it, they're not bad. But anything that you need rend with, flayers every time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Halomorn's not bad, and it does unlock our horrors as battle line. We've talked a lot about Blisterkin so far.
I'll just sit back and let you talk, Bill.
Bill is rubbing his hands. So Jesse, can you give us an idea about Blisterskin? Bill, take us away. Tell us about Blisterskin.
So I mean, again, this is just so powerful right now, especially with what's in the meta. I mean, every single ability on this page is going to be valuable to you as a tournament player, or even as somebody who's just trying to learn the game. So the 2 inches to movement is huge. The command ability that lets you take if you're a flying unit and you're within 12 inches of a Blisterskin hero or your 18 of your general, you can basically pick that unit up off the board and teleport it. So even if you get yourself into trouble, you can go anywhere you want on the board, and that's anything that flies. So a giant flare unit, your Terrorgeist, just any of that stuff is valuable. And even that Spectral Host also makes your unit fly. So even if you're playing a giant ghoul unit, you can make them fly, and then all of a sudden you're teleporting a unit of 40 ghouls on the board. So tremendous value there.
So even if it's in combat, you can remove it and teleport it.
That's right. You can't move again, but it's not a retreat. So you can still even charge with that unit.
which I know for like Carriage and Overlords players, they've got that rule sky high that allows them to teleport out. This is essentially the same rule.
Yeah, absolutely. The Hellish Orator, 4+, you get an extra command point. I mean, it never works for me, but in theory, it's great.
Like the 5+ command point save that never works for anyone that runs it.
Yeah, and then even I don't see a lot of people talk about this Aya Hish, but this artifact is actually the single thing, other than flares being battle line, that makes me run Blister Skin, and really that's because we're into really heavy shooting meta and big alpha strike shooting meta. So I will typically pair the Aya Hish, and on my Terrorgeist I'll run a Griff Feather. So between that and Lookout Sirs from my other characters, all of my characters are -2 to hit against shooting. So I mean, that alpha strike on your army is a lot harder to accomplish. It's wholly within 6, so I mean the value isn't going to be there in later turns, but you know, that first turn is a lot less scary.
Do you run the Aboran Arch Regent as your general with this one, Bill?
With this one, I run the Infernal actually, because
the Infernal, okay.
He'll have the 18-inch range for the teleport and sitting the flares.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense.
So he'll typically be in the middle, and then everything will be wholly within 6, especially against shooting. So again, this just drives to look at your packet, look at your opponents. You know, if you don't play against shooting armies, you're going to lose a lot of value if you're not playing against shooting armies running this.
Yeah, and I think the robust discussion we had about units and heroes is now starting to make sense. We're like, oh, okay, yeah, I can start to see how these guys work together, and now I've kind of like invested on my my Flayers and my Courtier, and you know I can summon a Vargulf or whatever it might be. Now I can start to do stuff such as this teleport, such as make it harder to hit. Now I can start to see that 12-inch move is now becoming 14, and now with a run and charge I can do X, and now I can start to like really manipulate how I play the game and how I want my army to run.
Yeah, and even think about this on your, you know, on your Terrorgeist. You're moving 14 base, you're moving 16 with the +2. I run the Griff Feather, so that's plus another 1, and then you can run and charge. So your Terrorgeist too is just incredible movement in this army.
You'd be able to get your... Sorry, go.
No, I was going to ask a question. Go on.
You'd be able to get your Flayers, like, so a unit of 9 Flayers up to like a 27-inch move or something like that, wouldn't you? If you, with cogs and the Blister Skin and the adding the wounds to their movement, I think it's 20, it might be 26. It's massive though, like, +2, +4, then another 6 for their thing, so +10 onto their standard move. They're scary, and they can run and charge. So you're actually looking at like 30 inches.
24. It would be 26 with cogs is your max.
Yeah, and then 32 with a run and charge.
Right.
Yeah,
something that I used to do in Legion of Night that I think works well here as well is that the Terrorgeist Scream, the shooting attack, is 10 inches. So if you were to remove it from the battlefield and move it outside of 9 inches for an enemy, it could still do a shooting attack.
Yeah. Players are the same as well. So against low bravery, perfect. You know, you pick your battles, and you can, you know, possibly do, you know, 3 or 4 wounds to some bravery 5 units, depending on who you play against. Like we said earlier, the meta is a lot of bravery 10 at the moment, but yeah, there's potential there. I mean, someone in the comments earlier stated that you can actually get people to neg 3 bravery, which would make a big difference. So you can, that would help.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
All right, Blister Skin, we like it. It's so far it sounds like the standout. Halo Morn is good. Probably not as good as Blister Skin, but there's something in that. And the other one that I've even forgot the name about, don't worry about it, move along.
Pretty much.
Like, don't worry about that one. The last one we haven't spoken about is going to be our Grizzagore. So we've talked about Grizzagore a lot. It's got a bad rep because it is just an absolute punch in the face and kick in the groins to your opponent.
Not so much anymore.
It has been changed slightly, yes.
Yeah, I think it has challenges too with Slanesh is a big deal. To Grizzagore, just the shooting meta again is a big deal for Grizzagore. But I mean, if you're just starting out, I mean, this is your bread and butter. I mean, it's very forgivable in terms of if you make mistakes. You have a very low amount of scrolls that you have to learn in terms of just learning rules. and just the damage output is ridiculous.
Enjoyable models to paint to get into this court. Those dragons are very good to paint.
But this is your big stompy, right? This is your Monster Mash build. I think something we didn't mention either is that with those Terrorgeists becoming battle line in Gristlegore, that also lifts the restrictions on your behemoths, so you can have more than 4. I'm not sure if we noted that yet.
No, we didn't. No, that's a really good call. That's a really good call out.
Yeah, that's good for people that don't know the intricacies, I suppose. That's
Do you just want to repeat that build like
escalation, so you don't have to start way back?
Yeah, so I think I'll just touch on it real quick, Anthony, is that when you make, so there's a couple of armies I think that do it, but it allows you to turn your dragons into battle line, which then with a 2,000 point army, you're restricted to 4 behemoths. So it actually lifts that restriction once they're battle line. I think there might be there's 1 or 2 other armies that can do it as well.
The Beast Claw Raider, the Ogre build, allows
it.
you to take more behemoths.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, and then I believe that the Gargants, it's been talked about, the Gargant army that's coming out is possibly going to have that lifted as well. But yeah, it is a big thing. So you're not actually restricted to 4. You can run, I think you can fit 6 into, I think you can get up to 6, but 5 is normally what you see dragons if you're going to max out dragons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So if you don't want to take ghouls and you're like, oh, I've only got four big monsters, good news, you can take more than just 4. So that's a really good hot take. Outside of that, why is Gristlegore spoken about so much? And is there a build outside of just like the Terrorgeist absolute just bash everyone?
Where do you start, I suppose, with the benefits? Like, there's not a bad thing in Gristlegore, really, is there, Bill?
So the Savage Strike, for example, is
no, I mean, it just turns that, the base Terrorgeists especially are just absolute monsters of damage, and this kind of turns it up to 11, right? I mean, your hits are exploding on your heroes. Your general is striking first with the Savage Strike. You even if, again, that always strikes first, that kind of makes things more forgiving. So even if you get a bad charge done on you, you're still striking first. The command ability, the call to war, again, if you make a big mistake and something gets killed, pop that, you can still attack. So, I mean, there's just a lot of things that make this army very forgiving and makes the damage output incredible.
Can I ask a question that may confuse a new player? So I'm looking at the interactions between the Peerless Ferocity and the Gaping Maw. So the Gaping Maw, if I roll an unmodified roll of a 6, it does 6 mortal wounds and I stop the sequence. Now, if I roll a 6 with a Gristlegore hero or a Gristlegore monster, a Terrorgeist is a monster, and I roll a 6, that attack does 2 hits on the target. So does that mean that I do 2 times 6 and I just stop the sequence? Is that how it works?
No, you would generate the 6 mortal wounds, and then you would just generate a further hit. So that's, I mean, right. you still have the opportunity to wound at your -2 with d6 damage, but you don't generate 12 mortal wounds.
Okay, and that's something that's worth calling out. So it's not 12, it's a 6, and then you roll to wound with the other dice.
Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, you see the damage piling on, right? Like your hits are exploding. The 6s are going to do another hit and do 6 mortal wounds. The other part of it is that with the spell, you're going to get another D3 attacks on that. So you can be 6 attacks on the Maw, exploding hits, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's just an incredible amount of damage.
And the chat's called up a really good rule as well, and they've said that the Savage Strike ability has been FAQ'd. So look, yeah, Jesse, please take it away.
Yeah, so that, like I stated earlier, Gristlegore used to be a lot better, but now you have to have charged to activate it, basically. So if you get charged in your opponent's turn, you don't then get to attack before they do. It's only on a charge roll. There is a way around this, which can pretty much guarantee you 3 rounds with the Doppelganger Cloak. If you give that to one of your big dragons or your general, then even if they charge you in one of their phases, you're guaranteed to still get to attack first because you've got that Doppelganger, which is double pile in. It is a way around it, and it has kind of nerfed them a little bit, but they're still very, very powerful. The exploding sixes are the biggest thing I reckon that they've got going for them. That just makes all of your dragons absolutely brutal in combat every single time.
And units in the game that are like this, normally they have a degrading profile, so a monster will lose attacks as it gets wounded. But the challenge with this one is that doesn't change. So even if it only had 1 wound left, you'd still have 3 attacks and 6 doing models, which makes it just absolutely potent if it's still on the board, regardless of how many wounds it's suffered.
And that's why the Terrorgeist is so much better than the Zombie Dragon, because that one that you really need to hit doesn't get affected by wounds. It's powerful all the time, regardless of how much damage you've taken.
Yeah. And I don't think we pointed it out yet, but even that Gurish Mashard artifact is pretty huge, especially against stuff like OBR, because you're going to need to really focus down on a unit. This gives you the ability to almost attack 2 units, because you can pick a model, and that is just hugely important for coherency on really powerful units. You can pull the guy out of the center, and all of a sudden you're killing half the unit of Motrek Guard.
Yeah, well, it's not like that's a really good call out. But with so like a couple of things that I'm thinking about is if I'm up against a change host, for example, or I'm up against a bunch of horrors, I could remove the banner using that, and that would stop the regeneration. Against Mortek Guard, they've got I can't remember the hero that's in the unit, what his name is, but the Hecatos. You could remove the Hecatos, and all of a sudden it loses its little command ability, and it can't do the shield wall, which is the re-rolling of saves. There are some armies that are really heavily synergized by one model in that unit. That's gold. That is absolutely gold.
You can always go for the Hail Mary too and try to roll a 6 and kill some 5-wound hero. But yeah, typically it's just to target the valuable model or break coherency in a big unit.
Yeah, I think with the coherency thing's really hard to do when it's within an inch, because then your opponent gets a pile in and they're going to get attacked as well and probably move models in a certain way that doesn't make that coherency worse. But definitely taking off a command point like a banner bearer or a hornblower or something is definitely I reckon that's where the power is, definitely. When you pick a model off from 4 inches, 5 inches away, and then they don't get a pile in, that's where I think Marathi's got something like that where she can hit
Star Drake's Star Drake I think can do it as well. Like there's a whole bunch of things that
that's right.
No, that's cool. And look, to be honest with you, and if this model is the last model to attack in combat and there's no further pile-ins happening, that would be perfect to break coherency. So I wouldn't write it off as a strategy. It's just like there's a lot of cool options with that artifact. It's a really good call.
In saying that though, Coach, it is at the start of the combat phase.
Yes. Good call.
Yeah. So it's the only downside of that. I did think about that. I'm like, oh, is it? And then no, there's no way around it.
Yeah. Awesome. And by the way, again, another call out in the chat is that there are things called mount traits as well that we'll talk about very soon, which then make the Terrorgeist or the Zombie Dragon even better than what we've spoken about already. So
it's going to wait till list building to bring that up.
I know. It's like that's the crazy thing, and that's what makes this why Grizzlegore is certainly the one that people enjoy building the most. So Grizzlegore and Blister Skin definitely probably our 2 strongest builds right now. Hollow Morn, maybe in 6 months' time you should revisit it depending on what your local scene is, but definitely we would need the high armored units that we're currently seeing right now being kind of scaled back a little bit.
And the Morgan Court, please, anyone, just message me and tell me that you've played it and it works.
I forgot its name already. That's how uninspired I was.
I really want to know if someone's made it work, but I doubt it.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah.
If I was going to build my own, so if I wasn't going to take one of those 4 grand courts, maybe just give us a high level. We've got a couple of options here when it comes to our different choices. Just quickly scrolling. So you've got a couple of different options. You've got the royalty first, so you've got 6 different choices when it comes to a command trait. Do any of those stand out to you guys? But this is only if I don't take the one of the 4. So you've got things like the Bringer of Death, the Frenzied Flesh Eater, the Savage Beyond Reason. Dark Wizardry was one that I always really enjoyed. You got the completely delusional and the majestical horror. Any of those stand out?
Yeah, so I regularly play like an open court sort of thing, and I take Dark Wizardry every time. That extra, ability to guarantee your casting and unbinding is huge. So, I think that's the standout for me. And then the secondary ones usually, I don't know. I think that's the main one. Either that or you take your Grand Courts. The Grand Courts give you pretty much everything else that you would choose out of that. So you just go for a Grand Court and get those other benefits.
Yeah, and this is instead of. So if you're not going to go Halo Morn or Blister Skin, you have your own option to make your own. Bill, any of those stand out for you?
No, I agree 100% on the Dark Wizardry. I mean, that's the way to go. This army relies so much on those buff spells. You need them going off.
Yeah. Things like the Chalice that we'll talk about a bit later, definitely you want that +1 to cast just to even keep that on the board. If you weren't going to take an abhorrent hero and you were going to go more the nobility route, do any of those ones stand out from you, like Dark Acolyte, the Cruel Taskmaster, the Hulking Brute, Frenzy? We got some commonality there.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, you would almost just give him the wizard keyword. Like you'd turn him into a wizard and make him be able to cast spells, and or reroll wounds for your Maw on a Terrorgeist. I think they're the two options there. Then that way you've got your Maw, and if you get wounds through on that, you really want him to hit because it's -2 rend d6 damage with the Maws. So rerolling that, it sucks failing a 3-up. It really sucks.
Yeah, I think, but generally, if you're going to have
it's Courtier.
If you're going to have the Courtier as a general, you're going to be playing in courts anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sorry, I forgot it was only Courtiers. But I've seen some people write lists with the Vargulf, and then use the Vargulf as a real, like a sniper character. But yeah, I think turning one of your Courtiers into a wizard helps a lot. Gives you the ability to give you guys, as you're running down the board, reroll ones, just chuck a bit of a Mystic Shield on them, or cast your Chalice down the field.
The only one that would tempt me would be the Hulking Brute. If I'm going to go a Courtier hero, maybe giving them +1 to their wound characteristics to help them be a little bit more survivable. But I tend to agree. I think the courts might be a bit stronger for if you're going to have a general that's sitting in that route.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen anyone run any of those outside of a Grand Court. So, yeah.
No, the Grand Courts are definitely more popular than the custom builds, but there is some stuff in here.
Yeah.
You got a couple of artifacts of power. You got 6 artifacts of power. You got 6 different ones for the Abhorrent, and you've got the Courtier. The Grim Garland we've already spoken about initially, which is subtract 2 from the bravery characteristics of enemies. So if you were going to try to do a bunch of screaming attacks, the Grim Garland could be a nice little piece to have. Other than that, is there any other artifacts that kind of stand out to you? I see one that I really like, but I want to hear what you guys have to say.
I mean, Dermal Robe for the
there
same
it is.
Dark Wizardry, right? It's if you're not playing in a court and you don't have a corpse cart, just more casting power.
Yeah, you get that and a corpse cart on your Archregent, and you +3. It's huge. I like to spread it out when I play, and I'll give Dark Wizardry to one, and then the Dermal Robe to another, and then I've got +1 on both, or on a Dragon and an Archregent. Just spread the love a little bit. I don't tend to play the Archregent up where it can get dispelled because it's more of a support character. A lot of the time it's sitting back and buffing the dragons 30 inches away, and then the dragons move 21. So, I'd rather have, +1. I think that's better than the Grim Garland. Extra reliability. Spells are integral, and they're random. So the more reliable you can make them in any army, the better off you are, because failing 3 or 4 spells in a round can really completely change your game. You can lose a game based on it. So the more reliable that is, the better off you are.
Yeah. Look, as a Halo Heart player originally, there was always a debate of, do I pay 140 points for the battalion or not? And the amount of times that +1 to the cast has made a huge difference on casting or unbinding. That definitely, to me, it only sounds like a little, only 1 to the +1, but that 1 can be the difference between casting or unbinding. So the only other one I would call out, and it's saved my ass many a times when I've played Legions of Nagash, is the Blood River Chalice that allows you once per battle to heal D6 wounds to the bearer. So having that up your sleeve can really save your butt in a tough combat, or to keep you in that higher tier band of the damage you can put out.
The amount of times I've got a zombie dragon down to 3 wounds and then it's healed up 6, it just kills me. With an ethereal amulet, oh god, you know, like, or your 3-up save, they're just, that chalice is massive.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I'd mention with the casting too is, you know, especially like your spectral host and your deranged transformation on a 10, and it's not an unmodified 10. You can pick 3 units to get those buffs as well.
Yep.
So I mean,
I forgot about that.
If you're getting +3 to your cast, you know, you're pretty reliably buffing 3 units instead of 1.
And then we also add the fact that you've got the chalice as well that can do an extra bunch of healing. So there's some cool things to think about, both from the dark wizardry build and the healing. So the courtier artifacts, or anything stand out for you guys from that one? For me, not so much.
If you're playing Ghoul Patrol, Flayed Pennant is neat. You know, if you're bringing all of your guys on one side instead of having to spend the CP for your reroll charge. If you need it, you can do that for free. I personally miss the old Flayed Pennant, but this one's cool too.
I don't think, that's probably not worth. That would require you to, you know, really bank on your courtier being right up the board. That 4 wound courtier, you know, it's not really. I don't think it's worth doing. You know, big bunch of ghouls, or you're going to run Blisterkin instead, so it's not worth having.
Well, he could outflank with him, but still, it's not the best use of an artifact.
No, you'd rather have Blisterkin and have their artifact and all of their abilities with it, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think what it comes down to for artifact wise anyway, if you're running the Courtier, is you'd almost be better off going with a realm artifact or something. But just stick to the aberrant ones or something like that.
Well, maybe that's a nice segue before I get into the spells, is let's put our artifacts to the side. If I was going to choose malign sorcery artifacts instead, or if I was going to get one because I've taken an extra one because I've got a battalion, is there any malign sorcery artifacts that stand out? So I think I heard Thermal Rider Cloak before.
I mean, for me, it's Griff Feather Charm.
Same here.
Number 1.
Because that's giving it -1 to hit and +4 to the move.
Plus one
+1 to the move.
Thermal Rider +4.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but the Griff Feather, like with the shooting meta as well, that's that hard counter to that, because you need any buff you can get to save you from shooting, pretty much. There's nothing worse than having your dragon shot off the board turn 1. Yeah. So I think Griff Feather. The only other one that would probably be worth is Thermal Rider, but that's if you're going for a real fast army. And then potentially the one, I don't know what it's called, where you get your 5-up command point back.
Your Aether Quartz Brooch.
Yeah, that's the one. And then you've got Ignax Scales maybe for an extra 4-up against mortal wounds, but Griff Feather definitely, and then one of their own, the Dermal Cloak or something is always better, I think.
Yeah. Cool. And you probably don't need a damage dealing one. You don't need Gaia Strike. You don't need Sword of Judgment. You're probably doing enough damage as it is.
Yeah. And there's no point using the Ethereal Amulet on a 4-up save monster, because it's kind of, if someone's going to put enough wounds in it to kill it, Ethereal Amulet isn't going to matter.
Yeah. You do have a spell lore. You've got 6 spells to choose from. We've started talking a few already. Are all of them good? Or is it just like, and again, we know that we don't have a lot of casters naturally in this army. So we're probably going to have to choose 1, 2, probably 3 at most. What ones stand out and why?
There's only 2.
Spectral Host.
Yeah, there's only 2. There's Spectral Host and Deranged Transformation, in my opinion. Spectral Host, if your unit flies, it can then run and charge. If it doesn't fly, then it can fly, which like Bill said earlier, that then allows you to move it around the board with Blisterkin and use it to, pop up on another board edge. For me, I take that every single time. Sometimes I double up on it just in case one of my heroes dies. You get it for free, so why not? And then if you don't have anything to use Deranged Transformation on, you may as well just double up on Spectral Host. What do you reckon? Do you want to talk through Deranged Transformation, Bill? Because you may have used it with your Blisterkin, do you think? Or
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, you talk on that one.
Range transformation, a couple values in that. Number one, what it does, you pick one friendly unit, or again, if you roll a 10, you're going to pick up to 3, and you add your wound characteristic to your move value. So, I mean, that just absolutely insane for those knight heavy armies. Where you're 4 wounds apiece, you're adding 4 to your movement. You can go up to 6. So, I mean, if you're trying to do a late game grab with your Arch Regent, add 6 to his move characteristic, auto run a 6. I mean, you can really just pull a lot of shenanigans out with this kind of movement stuff. And the big thing is a lot of these spells are a larger range, so it's wholly within 24. So even though this army is extremely fast, you still have a lot of ability to keep these units in range for buffing in the outer turns.
Yeah, it's one of the benefits of Flesh-Eater Courts for a new player is that their spells are actually really forgiving with the ranges. The Chalice is 24 inches from where you cast it. That's huge. A lot of their stuff is 24 inches. Spectral Host is the only one, like I get caught out on it sometimes, and I'm like, 12 inches. But you're usually casting it on yourself when you do Spectral Host, or the dragon next to it's casting it to launch the other dragon up or something like that. So, but yeah, it's very forgiving, that 24-inch range. It is a great starter army for anyone looking to get into Age of Sigmar or Flesh-Eater Courts in general. Is just a good army, and it's fun to play.
The only other spell that I've seen used a few times, and maybe you guys can share your insights on this one, was Blood Feast. I've seen, especially ones, being able to do D3 or D6 mortal wounds depending on the casting value, and then for each mortal wound that you inflict, you're going to heal a wound, or you can bring back a slain model instead. So I think it has some merit.
I would think. I mean, if you're running Gristlegore, for example, you're going to not really have as much value in Deranged Transformation. So your 2 go-tos are going to be Spectral Host and Blood Feast, most likely.
Yeah, I think that's probably the only case that you would use it. The other ones are better, and you, with limited amount of spells, you're probably not going to cast it. It might be to snipe a hero off. That's about it, I think.
Yeah. Finally, from a customizational point of view, before we talk about endless spells, we have mount traits. Now, what are mount traits? Because this got me new to some people, and how many mount traits do I get, Jesse?
So with your mount traits, you've got 6 of each, so 6 Terrorgeist, 6 Zombie Dragon ones. There is a couple of standouts. One thing I will note with these mount traits that people seem to forget is that when you run a battalion, you get an extra mount trait. And then in this book specifically, you can run the same mount trait twice. There's nothing that says that you can't run, in my opinion, Gruesome Bite twice. So you put on 2 Terrorgeist. There's nothing saying that you can't. I've had it questioned, and I'm like, nothing in the book. I've checked it more than once.
So this might be an argument why we want to take Royal Menagerie to get that extra mount trait on a Terrorgeist, as well as...
I think it's why you build battalions with Flesh-Eater Courts every single time. The extra artifact and the extra mount trait. If you're running more than one big beastie, I think you need to run a battalion, to be honest, and to lower your drops as well. Extra command point. There's no downside to these battalions in this book.
So there's one.
The drops are real important because there's a lot of shooting armies, and many of them are higher drop counts. So if you can keep your drop lower than that, it just gives you a huge opportunity to, kind of choose the momentum of the game.
Yeah, definitely. And that's can win and lose your games.
Are all 6 of them worth talking about? Because Gruesome Bite for the Terrorgeist is just a standout for me.
Is there other ones there, is there? I didn't realise.
Gruesome Bite is awesome because it's going to give you that ability to re-roll that 6 mortal wound attack. But are there any other ones that are worth considering? Maybe the auto heal of 3, maybe the horribly resilient.
Yeah, but would you take it over Gruesome Bite? Like, you wouldn't.
No,
You just wouldn't. Yeah, I think that there's argument for the Zombie Dragon, but for Terrorgeist, every single time, you just take that.
I agree.
All right, so Terrorgeist auto take as many Gruesome Bites as possible.
Yep.
With the Zombie Dragon, what would I take? Any thoughts?
Do you want to go, Bill? Touch on these? Or?
I mean, Razor Claw isn't bad. It definitely helps with keeping the Zombie Dragon a little bit more independent, especially if you don't have the hero on the back of it. I actually don't mind Death from the Skies. It's funny, if nothing else. I mean, it gives you a lot, especially if you're not in Blister Skin and you don't have that automatic teleport. I mean,
that's the one I've been eyeball humping. I'm looking at this going, man, having a deep striking zombie.
The big hang up for me that kind of turns that from super useful to not great is having to come out in the first turn.
Yeah. And
so
I think if you don't have cogs,
hold it back, then keeping it off the table, not getting shot off is huge. But having to come down first turn just removes a lot of value for me.
Yeah, I think that if you are going to rely on that, I think you almost need to take cogs as well, just to. Because if you bring it down outside of 9 and then it fails to charge and you re-roll and it fails again, you've lost a command point, you've wasted it for a turn. And then there's a lot to be said about the mind games, though, that you can play with having a big scary dragon just floating up in the sky, waiting to come down. So, and you can take objectives if your opponent sets up badly. You can just drop down onto an objective and just chill on that for a bit. So
it is a big base, though. I know from my Legion of Night experience, it's a big base, so it's hard to potentially get in, or to move around the board. And you guys are 100% correct. Without a hero, it means that you are you need to roll that charge. If you don't roll that charge, you're in trouble. If you get double turn, you're in even more trouble. And you're outside of your deathless save, unless it's a hero on that zombie dragon. So,
I mean, for me, going back to what we were saying earlier about lowering the drops, and then potentially having control over who goes first. I never go first. I don't want to go first with these guys. I want you to come towards me or waste a turn. So the benefit of that is you're probably not going to get double turned with that. Yeah, you might get hit back, but they're not going to come at you and then hit you twice, sort of thing. I don't know how you play, Bill, but do you tend to take first turn or second turn when you go?
With anything but Blister Skin, I typically go second. Blister Skin is just so fast. You actually have a lot of opportunity, and you can pivot your plan if you fail all your movement spells, right? But especially against like cities or anything that can really do a number on me if I don't go first and do the damage. Sometimes you just have to go first, but typically with Blister Skin, that's the only time I consider it.
Yeah. Caradron Overlords, I tend to go first. They're scary.
Ossiarch Bone Reapers, you probably want to go first as well before they put up their buffs and their shield walls.
Yeah, I think the way
Ossiarch, if you can get them.
Yeah, the way Ossiarch tend to play. If you're running big dragons, you can kind of just tag a corner of their units, and that really lowers the amount of damage they can do to you, I think.
Especially with Rift Feather.
Yeah, exactly. It just depends who you're playing against as well, depending on the general you're up against. But they're crap.
Depends on the mission too, right? I mean, if it's the mission is huge. So, if they get center board and it's Battle for the Pass or something, that's really, really bad. But other missions you can kind of afford to hold back a little bit.
Yeah, I think, and that's a good point. That Flesh Eater Courts are really, really good in some missions, and then others they really struggle with. Anything that relies on you to leave a big, scary unit behind to hold an objective for the whole game. The hero objectives are actually not that great in, because you can't afford to have a dragon sit back on an objective and just sit there and do nothing for the whole game, because it's such a linchpin to your army. There's a lot of
the zombies become a potentially a viable choice.
Yeah, I'm talking more about the hero only controlling the objective games there, and everyone throws one in a pack most times. You probably do the same, Anthony. When you run a tournament, you always throw one hero objective one in, and that's just to make people have to factor that in, and it's good. But yeah, Flesh-Eater Courts can struggle with that because you got to leave a hero behind.
On the flip side, if you had like a shifting objectives, or one that like a gift from the heavens, you've got the speed to be able to jump around and grab it. And so like there's a trade. I think Bill's
that's where they're awesome.
Read the pack.
Yeah, I mean, Flesh Eaters, when you have like objectives that are spread out all over the place, I mean, that's really where they shine. They actually, depending on the matchup, struggle versus when you have to concentrate, especially if it's against something like a Fire Slayers or an OBR. Because if they can push that damage pushback, then you can be in really big trouble. So I mean, I feel a lot more leverage. I feel like I have a lot better position when I can spread my army out because everything's so independent.
What we haven't spoken about, the final customization, is endless spells. So we have alluded to two maybe. So we've got a couple of Flesh-Eater Court only endless spells, and then we have our Malign Sorcery Forbidden Power ones. So we've talked about the Chalice a lot. Is it an auto-include, and why is it an auto-include?
It's definitely auto-include for me, but I run a lot of Ghouls, so it might be a bit different for you, Bill, depending on your list, I think.
Yeah, I typically run out of points to put it in there. But I don't think I've actually played in a tournament using it, to be honest. But I understand how powerful it is.
I've not played in a tournament without it.
Yeah. I mean, and really, all that's a testament to is how flexible the book is, right? Because it's only a few units, but you can do a lot with it. But I don't view any of the endless spells as auto take. You're not going to lose a game if you don't have Chalice in there.
No, it has won the game.
It is quite a good.
I've won a game 4 of a tournament against Pat Nevin, and we killed a lot of each other's models, and then it basically allowed me to summon back enough Ghouls to just swarm his objective, and then it was, I can't remember whatever the scenario was, but I needed to control both objectives, and that the Chalice won me the game because I could then summon back models enough to take that objective off him. For me, it's an auto include every time, and I think it's only 40 points. So
it's quite generous. You've got two other ones. You've got the Barricade, and then you've also got the Corpse Mare Stampede. Do either of those stand out, or any particular list builds that they might be better in? So Barricade, if the model starts within 3 inches, that you halve the move, and when missile weapons target the unit within 1, they receive cover.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm not a real big fan of either of those rules wise, but where they do both have a lot of power is just it's a large base, right? It's a large model. So that's really where the value, especially that Corpse Mare. I mean, geez, I think it's huge.
I think the Barricade is good against if you're playing in a meta with a lot of little dwarfy men. What are they called? Fire Slayers, and even your Ossiarch. Bringing their move down is a lot, and just putting things in front of them and making them have to move around it, especially the Fire Slayers, because they can only dispel 1 a game. I think they use a rune to dispel something. Is that right? And then, if they've basically got to move around it with their little 4-inch move. It's, I think depending on the meta and what kind of tournament you're going into, the Barricade has something to say. Corpse Mare Stampede is basically just a little bit of a mortal wound, endless spell, which you can get, you'd use your spell elsewhere, I think.
The only thing that I do like about the Corpse Mare is that you set it up 3d6 from the caster, and then it can move 14 inches. So it does have a really long threat range if the dice gods are favorable to you. Yeah,
I think that the 3d6. So I'm building a Gitz army at the moment, which has random movement, and that it's fun if you're going to play for fun. But from a competitive build point, that random movement can hurt, can't it, Magro?
Oh
Yeah, there was one particular tournament I was playing against Dan Brewer, and I had my Mangler Squig, and I had my Colossal Squig, and I had the perfect strategy to destroy Dan Brewer, the best Skaven player in the world. And I shot my Colossal up. He rolled like 24 inches move, because he rolls 46. And then my Mangler Squig, which is super important to buff that, rolled a 4 on 3d6.
Perfect.
So the whole strategy was out, and it was completely gone. I have this amazing unit that is now outside by himself, and I got screwed.
Do you think you do it the other way around next time? Charge the Mangler first, or like move the Mangler first and then decide, or?
No, that's not how kids do things. But yeah, random movement is. I threw a mushroom that went 6 off 66.
Yeah.
But that's what you get when you roll random.
And they're so fun to play against. It's like overcharging Skaven's weapons. You know, it's great to play against. It's great to play with for fun. But competitively, yeah, you want to take out as much randomness as possible, I think. Yeah.
Well, it's like I love the Hell Pit Abomination, but he's a set movement value away from being amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. So we've customized our lists. We've got a whole bunch of ideas around the sub-allegiance. We know about the artifacts, the command abilities, the traits, the mounts, all the cool stuff. I guess the last part of this that I want to get out of you guys is what are the hints, tips, and tricks that you want to share with me now that I'm going to play with them on the board. And Bill, I've got to ask you, I've had people in the chat asking they want to know about your Dead Watch. So I'd love to hear a bit about your Dead Watch and maybe some ideas that you want to share with us. But more broadly, how do I get the most out of it? How do I have fun with this army? How do I do well with it? Bill, I might throw you first, and then I'll get some tips along the way.
Yeah, I mean, just some general tips. Again, it really does depend on what your meta is and what the mission pack looks like if you're talking about a tournament. But a big mistake that I see a lot of people make to avoid, especially with your Terrorgeist, is how you engage that model. So it's real tempting to kind of just throw that up and throw it into a unit and it's going to smash a bit. But really, you almost want to play that model, especially on the edges of units. I mean, they have a unique advantage of being able to do a ton of damage, just doing that min engage half away on the edge of a unit. So really use that to your advantage, and then you're piling in 6 inches with the extra piling. The other thing I definitely advocate for, and that's big in my Death Watch list, is big units of flares. They're very similar to a Terrorgeist in terms of damage output, but they have a lot more value in terms of durability. So it's a lot more wounds, especially if you put unholy vitality on them. It's a really tough nut to crack, and just the board control that presents between the size of the bases, the size of the unit, and how far it moves is just absolutely insane. It's between the movement and the size of the unit, especially if you're really spreading it out, you can cover the entire board very easily. But yeah, as far as my the Death Watch list, I actually played at LVO. I did real well. I lost one game to William, who eventually won the whole thing, and it was Slaanesh. So I knew as long as I avoided Slaanesh, I'd be okay. And unfortunately, I played against Slaanesh. So it was played against 4,800 points. We tallied it up at the end.
Oh wow!
It's just it's tough for you to deal with that, but no, it's Infernal Courtier, the Aberrant Archregent, and the Terrorgeist with Griff Feather. 9 flares, 3 flares, 3 flares, 30 ghouls, and a corpse cart. And I think that's the whole thing, but just super fast, tons of damage everywhere, tons of board control, and just really handles the board. And that Eye of Hish is super valuable. So first round, I played against 50 Iron Drakes, which you would think is a bad matchup, but when you're -2 to hit everywhere, it really wasn't that bad.
Yeah, that's awesome. And while it's fresh in my mind, my one little piece of advice I'll give everyone is, just because a Terrorgeist can scream doesn't mean you should. There's been a few times where I've been on I've deep striked it. I've been within just outside of 9 inches. I've screamed. My jerk opponent has removed 1 or 2 models that's closest to me that then made the charge a 9 or a 10 or an 11, and That 1 or 2 has been the difference between a charge and a no charge. So
Yeah, you only made that mistake once.
yeah, I've done it once, and I'm like, never again. Never again. Right. I'm adding cogs so that doesn't happen again. But just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yep, 100%. Or direct it somewhere else. Direct it to the unit you're not going to charge. Yeah.
A lot of trick, especially if I know he's going to his death, I'll use that scream just to try to put a couple wounds on the character and then hope the infested corpse takes him out.
That's a good tip. Jesse, what advice would you give me?
Yeah, I think Bill and I both seem to have very, very different play styles. My advice would probably be don't overestimate how strong your dragons are or how survivable they are. Because with a 4-up save, they do go down. In saying that, like Bill said, tag the end of a unit. Just touch one model or, bring yourself up against a building where they can't pile around you. And then, you can do a lot of damage by touching one model, but if you get swarmed or if you get shot by a lot, those dragons, they do fall down quite quickly. The other thing as well is protect your Arch Regent. If you're playing the Arch Regent, he is so strong, but so easily to be killed. So 7 wounds, it's not hard to get 7 wounds through onto a hero, even if you've got him in cover on a 3-up or a 2-up save, whatever he is. Once he dies, that's a large portion of your army that's really, really struggling. And then, the mind games are massive. Don't allude to your opponent where you're going to bring models on until you do it with your summoning, because that's the mind games you can play with bringing a dragon on or being able to teleport guys around the board or summoning guys onto a board edge. It just, the amount of times opponents have had to leave 200-300 points sitting right at the back of their board on an objective because I can summon and then take that objective, that's potentially brings their 2,000 point army down to 1,700. And that's really easily, all I'm doing is not spending a command point. And sometimes you don't even need to summon. Sometimes the value of having someone not be able to move their models from their backboard edge is worth, 120 points of unsummoned models. That mind game is easily worth it. So, there's a lot to be said about playing mental games with your opponent in terms of summoning and teleporting models around the board.
Yeah, especially when most armies will move off their objective, especially like in the scenarios where you don't have to have a unit sitting there to keep it. Most armies kind of advance, but the minute you have something like a tree rev or a set of ghouls or something that can come on the backboard, it really does change the way people look and deploy and even interact with the game. And then all of a sudden, if you've got the shenanigans on the sides of the boards, all of a sudden you can really stretch out an opponent and take advantage of a weak flank. And the speed of Flesh Eater Courts allows you to exploit that even more than most armies.
The amount of games I've lost with, shenanigans, bringing things on a board edge or, teleporting. I've lost as many games as I've won. I've lost probably twice as many. But, having that experience matters. And, losing games is as important as winning, I think. If you just win all the time, you're never going to figure out what your weaknesses are until you go to a tournament. You come up against Slanesh and they can do one of every single trick in the book. And then, you've never lost a game, so you don't know how to counteract any of that. But,
play against horrible matchups.
That's right.
Matchups.
Yeah, that's right.
I always found that because Flesh Eater Courts can be a very frail army, and I say frail because it doesn't have the best armor saves in the world, you really need to know the damage output that your units have so that you can pick the best fights for your army. Obviously there's shenanigans that allow you to kind of remove yourself from combat, but knowing the damage potential and that comes through practice is critical.
I think understanding your opponent's threat ranges are very important as well. Being able to counteract or be the right distance away and stop them from getting into combat with you in their turn is massive, because they can take your dragon off, or they can take off your unit of flayers with a big horde army. They get enough attacks in. Like you said, Bill, the benefit of the flayers is they've got such big bases, but it's also a disadvantage as well sometimes when you're playing against a horde, because that's a lot more space for them to just pile in around. But being highly aware of your opponent's damage output and threat range is another big thing, because they are frail. Like, Flayers are a 5-up save, and even with the 5-up, 6-up after that, you know, you get 60 wounds through on a unit of 24 wounds or whatever the Flayers have. They're going to really struggle to save enough to keep them alive. Yeah, they are frail. You couldn't be more close to the truth there.
Bill, a question that's come from the chat that I'd love your insights on is, I've got a whole bunch of units that can summon, let's say the Archregent. Do you have a set of units that you will go to, like they're your priority number one summons, or how do you best assess what you summon, other than obviously the match? Because if I'm a new player, I don't know what to summon and how to counteract the opponent. So take me through the process and give me some tips around how to make a better summoning decision.
Yeah, I mean, for the Archregent especially, like 90% of the time, it's going to be the Ghouls. I mean, typically your decision tree is just, what do you need for the next 2 turns? You know, if you're planning for just 1 turn, you're going to get yourself into trouble. But hero scoring missions, I'll bring on a Vargulf typically, even on my own board edge. But almost every other time, I'll bring on 20 Ghouls. Very rarely will I bring on Knights with the Archregent, and then with the Terrorgeist, just bring on 3 Flares. And that's really it. Zombie Dragon, always a Vargulf. I think that's it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, 100%.
Is there anything else you guys want to share with me? You guys have given me 2.5 hours of delicious content that I'm sure everyone has found very, very valuable. But is there any other hints, tips, tricks along the way that you think is worth I know?
I think build to a battalion to begin with. If you're going to go competitive, I think every Flesh Eater Courts army that does well has a battalion built into it. I know when I played Lord of War in Melbourne, I got matched up against 3 Flesh Eater Courts army, and I went 5-0 there. Lost out on strength of schedule, but every single army I come up against had a battalion in it, because the extra command point, artifact, double mount traits, it's just, yeah, I would pretty much start with a battalion. And if you're going to run Ghouls, that Chalice is a must-have, I think. Yeah, they're probably the 2 extra, like, I just couldn't harp on it enough. Battalions are very important. I think by the sounds of it, Bill, you always build to a battalion as well, because they are important.
Yeah, I completely agree, especially when you're first starting. You know, build to a battalion, you'll understand a new mechanic that maybe you wouldn't know otherwise. The other thing I'd advise is just be very self-aware of what your play style is. So I typically play a little bit more conservative. So switching to blister skin was very difficult for me, because I'm like, that's just not going to work here. So really understand how you play, and until you can kind of learn to break yourself of that, you know, put something together that's gonna just kind of play to that. Because if you're trying to build something that goes against your play style, you know, it's probably not going to matter. You're going to struggle. So be very self-aware of in every situation kind of how you would typically handle it, and just get your hands around what your play style is like.
Yeah, I agree. I am generally a conservative player, which doesn't make sense considering I've gone from Daughters of Cain to Flesh Eater Courts. But it's that conservative play style that I find actually helps me win games a lot of the time. So my Daughters of Cain was a Temple Nest list, so heavy snakes, low drops, and I would always give away first turn, which no one expects, especially when you're playing a highly offensive army. And that's just another thing that gets inside people's heads a little bit, I suppose. But it also allows you to react to other people's play style. But yeah, I like playing offensive armies conservatively because it throws people for 6. Yeah, but I suppose that is my play style. Going to Gits, I might play in defensive army offensively. Who knows? Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to change my play style, but that's the whole reason why I've gone to them for the next 12 months at least. I think I can probably get 2 to 3 years out of them, though. There's that many builds in the book, so yeah, it's yeah, like you said, know your play style and play to it, and if it doesn't work, be prepared to adjust it. So yeah.
I think they are wonderful parting comments. I think that's a nice way to think about your army, think about your play style, think about what really drew you to this army and which models and build around it. And it's such a great book with lots of different variety that I think you could stay here for a long time. So Bill, Jesse, thank you guys both. If you guys want to learn more from these gentlemen, you can see their Twitter handle in the show description. But if they want to follow you, is there any shout outs you guys want to make before we kind of wrap this up? Bill, go you first, and then we'll finish Jesse.
Nope, just anybody that is in the U.S., support us coming this summer. Going to be battling it out in ETC again. We were fortunate enough to come in second place last year, but we're definitely not happy with that. So even if you're not in the U.S., feel free to support us. Visit us, reach out, message. Be happy to talk to anybody. I love talking about Warhammer.
Unfortunately, Bill, you can't get any better than second this year because Australia has entered. So unfortunately, you're going to have to settle in second. Australia's going to come first in our first year in the ETC. It's just how we do.
Nice. Well, hey, I hope we get to play your countrymen, and no matter what, it'll be a fun round. That's for sure.
I hope you match up with Liam. That would be amazing, and I would pay a lot of money for that to happen.
Yeah.
No, Bill, man, honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. You have been playing Flesh Eater Courts for a long time, so do follow both of these people. Jesse, any shout-outs you want to make?
Just want to shout out my club, Borderline Gaming. Mainly probably Matt Tyrrell. He's the main guy I play against. He's also, not a great bloke, but
he won the Masters with Petrifix Elite in
filth, and he has a go at me. Yeah, he talks to me about being a filth player, but he's probably the guy I play against the most. And I think majority of my wins with my armies have actually come down to playing against Matt and talking through games afterwards. But our club is slowly building, and I think last time we had a club day, we had 8 guys rock up, which is awesome for our tiny town of 80,000 people. And we've got 8 guys at a club, so shout them out. Adam Burt, he's all right, I suppose. Not great. Won CanCon 2 years ago. Doesn't really matter these days. But yeah, just shout out the boys that I play with. And big shout out to the missus for letting me talk online for 2.5 hours while she's looking after the baby.
Shout out to the missus. Shout out to the missus. Yeah. Mine's got to have lunch with her mum, so shout out to my wife as well. But and if you want to talk Flesh Eater Courts as well, guys, there are some awesome Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups, so I'd highly recommend you go and join them, share your list, hear what other people are doing. This video is certainly going to help a lot of people, but keep talking about these lists and find ways to respond to the meta. I'm sure there are plenty of people out there already who have started cracking the code, and Bill and Jesse are just 2 people who have helped us do that.
Yeah, I think just last final thing, if you're thinking about getting into AOS or you're starting out, this is probably one of the best 2 armies to start with. And watching this, we've just unloaded a wealth of knowledge, all thanks to the coach here, for you guys to start out with. We've pretty much covered everything, and barrier to entry is real low with this army, so it's good. It's a lot to learn and a lot to master, but it is definitely a great starting point for AOS. And the more of us that get into it, the better, because I've not met a bad AOS player yet. 40k, man, not so sure, but AOS, I love you guys. I don't play 40k, so I can't really comment.
Yeah, don't start a war on my channel, please.
No, I'm just saying, 40k I don't know, because I don't play against them. What did you go do? You must have some bias there, do you, Magro?
No, I just don't want the 40k community to attack my channel.
No, they love it.
This.
Yeah, they love it.
Thing I can say on that point, I've done a lot of competitive 40k, a lot of competitive AOS. In my 2 or 3 years at AOS has been competitive. I don't think I've had a single bad game, especially sportsmanship wise. So, anybody who is thinking of getting into tournaments, and that may be a concern of theirs, especially AOS on the state side anyway, everybody's complete gentlemen. It's just a fantastic experience.
I played in America, I played in England, I played in Australia. I couldn't agree more. Everyone's awesome. All right, on that note, I'm going to wrap up. Bill, Jesse, thank you again for your insights. If you enjoyed it, make sure to put comments in the comment section and tell them how much you love Bill and Jesse. Go follow them both on Twitter. They are amazing people. Some are more active than others, Jesse. And we'll chat again later, I'm sure. Got more faction focuses to do and other content. But until next time. No, like
Yeah,
and
come on.
subscribe, hashtag.
Like and subscribe, hashtag.
Hashtag. Oh, if we're going to do that, then I probably should also shout out all of my amazing Patreons who have helped us. So shout out to the Patreons, you guys. Keep food in my belly, and my dog living in a house. He doesn't have to be homeless, living in a box. But shout out to all these guys who are amazing. And thank you for your support. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Jesse. Roll more sixes.
Thank you.
Thanks.